You have been lied to about mental strength. They told you that strong people are born fearless, that they never feel pain, never lose control, and never struggle when life becomes difficult. But if that were true, why do some people collapse under pressure while others remain calm through loss, rejection, failure, and uncertainty? Why can the same hardship destroy one mind but deepen the wisdom of another? The truth is, the mind does not become strong by avoiding difficult experiences. It becomes strong through training, and Buddhism has spent centuries teaching people exactly how to train it. Buddhism trains the mind to face pain without becoming trapped inside it, to feel fear without obeying it, and to experience change without losing inner balance. It teaches you to stop fighting reality, stop believing every thought, and stop allowing every emotion to control your actions. This is not weakness, and it is not passive acceptance. It is the quiet strength to see clearly, respond wisely, and remain steady even when life refuses to give you what you hoped for. As you listen to these lessons, something inside your mind will begin to shift. You will learn why suffering becomes heavier when you resist it, why uncertainty feels dangerous when you demand control, and why old pain continues to hurt when you keep feeding it with attention. Little by little, your thoughts will slow down, your reactions will become calmer, and the things that once controlled your peace will begin to lose their power. You will learn how Buddhism trains you to remain kind without becoming easy to hurt, how to face difficult people without letting them control your mind, and how to stand inside discomfort without treating it like an emergency. When the next storm enters your life, you may still feel sadness, fear, or anger, but you will no longer become the storm. You will know how to watch it, understand it, and let it pass without losing yourself. This is not just another lesson about thinking positively. This is training for the mind, a path toward becoming calmer, wiser, and stronger through anything life places before you. Are you ready? Let's begin. That training begins with one of the hardest truths the mind must face. Life will not always be fair, kind, or easy to understand. A painful event can enter your life without warning and leave you asking questions that have no clear answer. You may wonder why it happened to you, why someone treated you badly, why your effort was ignored, or why a person who caused harm seems to be living peacefully while you are left carrying the pain. The mind begins to protest. It says, "This should not have happened. I did not deserve this. Life was supposed to be different." These thoughts may feel reasonable, but when repeated for too long, they quietly turn pain into suffering. Buddhism does not ask you to deny that something was unfair. It does not ask you to smile at cruelty, excuse harmful behavior, or pretend that injustice does not matter. It teaches something more difficult and more useful. It teaches you to see clearly what has already happened, accept that it is now part of reality, and choose how you will respond from this moment forward. There is a major difference between recognizing injustice and refusing to accept reality. Recognizing injustice means you understand that something wrong happened. Refusing reality means you keep demanding that the past become different before you allow yourself to move forward. One can lead to wise action. The other often leads to exhaustion. You may have lost years to a relationship that did not value you. You may have trusted someone who betrayed you. You may have worked hard and watched another person receive the opportunity you believed you had earned. You may have cared for people who were absent when you needed them. You may have done your best and still experienced failure. In each case, the first pain came from the event itself. The second pain came from the mind repeatedly arguing that the event should never have happened. The event may have lasted one day, but the argument can continue for years. This is how the mind becomes trapped. It keeps returning to the same scene, looking for a different ending. It creates conversations that never happened. It plans what it should have said. It imagines the apology it should have received. It searches for a reason that will make the pain feel acceptable. Yet no amount of mental protest can return you to the moment before the harm occurred. The past does not change because you think about it harder. This can feel painful to admit because part of you may believe that acceptance means surrender. You may fear that if you accept what happened, you are saying it was right. But acceptance and approval are not the same. Approval says, "This was good." Acceptance says, "This happened, and I will not destroy my present by demanding that it did not." Acceptance is not weakness. It requires more courage than denial because it asks you to look directly at reality without turning away. It asks you to stop waiting for life to explain itself before you begin living again. It asks you to carry the truth without allowing the truth to crush you. The Buddha taught that suffering is part of human life. This does not mean every moment is painful. It means that change, loss, disappointment, illness, aging, separation, and uncertainty are unavoidable parts of being alive. No person is given a private agreement that protects them from these experiences. Wealth cannot completely prevent them. Intelligence cannot outthink them. Kindness cannot guarantee that others will always be kind in return. You can live carefully and still be hurt. You can love deeply and still lose someone. You can make wise decisions and still face consequences you did not expect. You can be honest and still be misunderstood. You can prepare for the future and still encounter something you could never have predicted. The mind suffers when it believes good behavior should create complete protection from painful experiences. It secretly creates a bargain with life. If I am kind, no one should betray me. If I work hard, I should succeed. If I love someone, they should stay. If I make careful choices, nothing should go wrong. But life never signed that agreement. When reality breaks the bargain, the mind does not only feel pain, it feels cheated. It becomes angry at life itself. It asks why the rules were not followed, even though the rules existed only inside its expectations. This does not mean effort is useless. Hard work can increase the chance of success. Kindness can create meaningful relationships. Good decisions can reduce unnecessary suffering. Careful planning can protect you from many problems, but none of these things give complete control over life. Strength begins when you understand the difference between influence and control. You can influence many things through your choices, discipline, words, habits, and actions. You cannot control every result. You cannot control how everyone treats you. You cannot control how long someone stays. You cannot control every change in your body. You cannot control every opportunity, loss, delay, or ending. When you confuse influence with control, every unexpected result feels like a personal failure. You believe you must have done something wrong because life did not obey your plan. You search for a mistake even when there was no mistake. You blame yourself for events that were shaped by other people, chance, timing, and conditions beyond your reach. Buddhist wisdom helps you release this false responsibility. It reminds you that life is formed by many causes and conditions. Your choices matter, but they are not the only forces at work. Other people have their own minds, histories, fears, desires, wounds, and decisions. The world is constantly changing. Circumstances rise and disappear. Something can end even when you did everything you knew how to do. This understanding can bring relief. It allows you to stop carrying the full weight of every outcome. There are times when you should learn from a painful experience. Perhaps you ignored warning signs. Perhaps fear kept you silent. Perhaps you stayed too long, trusted too quickly, or avoided a difficult decision. Honest reflection can make you wiser, but reflection becomes harmful when it turns into endless self-punishment. Wisdom asks, "What can this teach me?" Self-punishment asks, how long can I make myself suffer for not knowing then what I know now? You cannot use today's understanding to judge the person you were years ago. At that time, you acted with the knowledge, strength, and awareness available to you. You may have been emotionally attached. You may have been afraid. You may have hoped things would improve. You may not have seen what now appears obvious. Growth changes your vision. What looks clear today may have been hidden from you then. Instead of hating your past self, you can have compassion for the person who was trying to survive with limited understanding. This is part of accepting reality. You accept not only what others did, but also what you did, what you allowed, what you missed, and what you could not understand at the time. You do not need to pretend your choices were perfect. You simply stop believing that hatred toward your former self will repair them. A strong mind does not waste its life putting the past on trial every morning. It takes the lesson and releases the courtroom. Many people remain emotionally tied to those who hurt them because they are waiting for fairness to arrive through an apology. They believe peace will begin when the other person finally understands the damage they caused. They wait for a confession, an explanation, or a moment of regret. Sometimes that moment comes. Often it does not. Even when an apology arrives, it may not sound the way you imagined. It may be incomplete. It may include excuses. It may come too late. It may not restore what was lost. If your healing depends completely on another person becoming honest, mature, and aware, then your peace remains in their hands. Buddhism teaches you to reclaim that peace. You can understand what happened without receiving an explanation. You can close a door without being given permission. You can stop carrying someone's actions, even if they never admit what they did. You can decide that your life will not remain frozen while you wait for another person to develop a conscience. This does not remove accountability. People should face the consequences of harmful behavior. Boundaries may be necessary. Distance may be wise. Legal or practical action may be required. Acceptance does not mean doing nothing. It means your action comes from clarity rather than blind anger. When the mind is trapped in resistance, it often reacts without wisdom. It sends messages it later regrets. It makes decisions only to punish someone. It tries to force closure. It speaks from the wound instead of from understanding. These actions can create new pain on top of the original pain. Acceptance creates a pause. Inside that pause, you can ask better questions. What is within my control now? What protects my dignity? What response will I respect later? What lesson should I carry forward? What must I release because it cannot be changed? These questions return your power to the present. The present is the only place where action is possible. You cannot act yesterday. You cannot repair tomorrow before it arrives. You can only choose what you will do with this moment. This is why arguing with the past is so draining. It uses present energy to fight an event that no longer exists, except in memory. You may replay the event so vividly that your body responds as though it is happening again. Your heart races, your muscles tighten, your breathing changes, your anger returns. The memory becomes a fresh experience each time you feed it. The mind believes it is solving something, but it is often reopening what it says it wants to heal. Buddhist practice encourages observation without attachment. When the memory returns, you do not need to push it away. Fighting it can make it stronger. Instead, you notice it. This is a painful memory. Anger is present. Sadness is present. My mind wants the past to change. By naming what is happening, you create space between yourself and the reaction. You are no longer completely inside the memory. You become the one observing it. This space is where strength grows. At first, the space may last only a few seconds. You notice your anger before you speak. You recognize the old story before you spend an hour feeding it. You feel the desire to blame yourself, but you pause. Every small pause weakens the habit of automatic suffering. Over time, the mind learns that a memory is not an order. A painful thought does not require you to follow it. An emotion can be felt without becoming a decision. This does not happen through one moment of understanding. The mind has practiced resistance for years. It has built strong habits around complaint, blame, regret, and fear. New strength requires repeated training. Each time you say, "I do not like what happened, but I accept that it happened," you are training the mind. Each time you return from the past to the present, you are training the mind. Each time you choose a wise response instead of an emotional reaction, you are training the mind. Each time you stop demanding an answer that may never come, you are training the mind. This is how Buddhist strength is built, not through pretending that pain does not matter, but through changing your relationship with pain. Consider how much energy is used by the thought, "This is not fair." Sometimes that thought is useful. It can awaken courage. It can push you to speak against injustice, protect someone, change a harmful system, or leave a damaging situation. But after you have recognized the problem and taken the action available to you, repeating the thought may no longer help. There is a point where awareness must become action, and action must eventually become release. Without release, even a true thought can become a prison. You may be completely correct that you were treated unfairly. You may have evidence. Others may agree. But being correct does not always bring peace. The question becomes, how long will I allow this truth to control my inner life? Some people spend decades proving that they were wronged. They tell the story so often that it becomes their identity. Every new relationship is measured against the old betrayal. Every opportunity is filtered through the old failure. Every disagreement touches the same wound. The unfair event becomes the center of their life. Buddhism invites you to hold the event as part of your story, not as the definition of who you are. Something painful happened to you, but you are not only the person it happened to. You are also the person who survived it, learned from it, and can choose what happens next. Your past may explain some of your fears, but it does not need to command your future. This matters because the mind often uses pain as protection. It says, never trust again, never try again, never become vulnerable again, never hope again. These promises feel like strength because they reduce risk, but they also reduce life. A closed heart may avoid certain wounds, but it also blocks connection. A person who never tries may avoid failure, but also avoids growth. Someone who expects betrayal may feel prepared, but may never experience trust. True strength does not mean becoming unreachable. It means becoming wise enough to remain open without becoming careless. Acceptance helps you separate the lesson from the fear. The lesson may be, pay attention to actions, not only words. Fear says, no one can be trusted. The lesson may be, set boundaries earlier. Fear says, never let anyone close. The lesson may be, prepare carefully. Fear says, do not take another risk. Wisdom is specific. Fear is absolute. Buddhism teaches the middle path. You do not return to blind trust, but you do not live in permanent suspicion. You do not ignore danger, but you do not treat every situation as dangerous. You do not deny pain, but you do not build your home inside it. Another form of resistance appears when life does not match the timing you expected. You believed you would be settled by a certain age. You thought your work would have produced more by now. You expected a relationship, family, financial stability, healing, or recognition to arrive sooner. The mind compares your real life to an invisible schedule. Then it calls the difference failure. But the schedule was not reality. It was a plan, a hope, or an expectation. Life may move differently. Some doors open late. Some paths take longer. Some plans collapse because they were leading you somewhere that no longer fits who you are becoming. You may not understand the delay while you are inside it. That is where strength is tested. Can you continue without treating every delay as proof that life is against you? Can you work with what is present instead of fighting the absence of what you wanted? Buddhist patience is not passive waiting. It is steady action without constant emotional war against timing. You continue planting, learning, preparing, and showing up. You do not demand immediate proof that your effort will succeed. A farmer cannot pull a seed from the soil every morning to check whether it is growing. Constant interference destroys the process. In the same way, the mind can ruin its own progress by demanding visible results too quickly. Some changes happen quietly. You may believe nothing is improving because the outside situation has not changed, while inside you are becoming more disciplined, aware, and emotionally steady. That inner change may later shape everything that follows. Life is not fair in the way the mind expects. People do not always receive according to their goodness. Harmful people sometimes succeed. Kind people sometimes struggle. Effort is not always rewarded immediately. Truth is not always recognized. Love is not always returned. Buddhism does not hide this. It asks you to build a peace that does not depend on life behaving perfectly. This may sound difficult because it is difficult. A peace based on perfect conditions is easy. Anyone can feel calm when everything goes according to plan. The deeper practice is remaining grounded when plans fail, people disappoint you, and outcomes remain uncertain. This kind of peace is not a mood. It is a trained way of meeting life. It says, I will respond to what is here. It says, I will not add unnecessary suffering to unavoidable pain. It says, I can protect myself without becoming consumed by hatred. It says, I can grieve what was lost without losing the rest of my life. It says, I do not need reality to be different before I begin making wise choices. When you stop demanding that life be fair, you do not become careless about justice. You become more effective. Your energy is no longer wasted on wishing the event had never happened. You can use that energy to protect yourself, rebuild, speak clearly, support others, or create change. Anger may show you that a boundary was crossed. Grief may show you what mattered. Disappointment may reveal where your expectations were attached. Fear may reveal what you believe you cannot survive. Each emotion contains information, but none of them should become your permanent ruler. The strong mind listens to emotion without handing over complete control. There will still be days when acceptance feels far away. A reminder may reopen the pain. An unfair result may trigger old anger. You may find yourself asking the same questions again. This does not mean you have failed. Healing is not a straight line. The mind may return to old habits, especially when tired, lonely, or under pressure. What matters is how gently and quickly you return. You do not need to insult yourself for struggling. Harshness does not create wisdom. You can simply notice, I am arguing with reality again. I am asking the past to change. Let me return to what I can choose now. This gentle return is part of Buddhist discipline. It combines honesty with compassion. You do not excuse the habit, but you do not hate yourself for having it. Ask yourself what remains possible. Perhaps you can apologize. Perhaps you can leave. Perhaps you can speak. Perhaps you can rest. Perhaps you can seek help. Perhaps you can forgive yourself. Perhaps you can stop contacting someone who continues to harm you. Perhaps you can begin again in a small way. Strength often appears through small choices, not dramatic moments. It is getting out of bed when disappointment has made everything feel heavy. It is refusing to send the angry message. It is admitting that the relationship has changed. It is accepting that someone may never become who you hoped they would be. It is choosing not to repeat the harm that was done to you. It is facing the truth before the truth becomes more painful. These choices may not look powerful from the outside, but they change the direction of your life. The demand for fairness keeps the mind focused on what it should have received. Acceptance brings attention to what can still be created. You may not receive the years back, but you can protect the years ahead. You may not receive the apology, but you can give yourself closure. You may not understand why the loss occurred, but you can decide what kind of person you will become through it. You may not control what happened, but you can influence what it produces inside you. Pain can make you bitter, but it can also make you more aware. Betrayal can make you cruel, but it can also teach discernment. Failure can make you hide, but it can also deepen your patience. Loss can close your heart, but it can also show you the value of what remains. The event does not choose the final meaning. Your response helps shape it. This is not the belief that everything happens for a good reason. Some events are simply tragic, cruel, or senseless. You do not need to force a beautiful explanation onto something terrible. Meaning can come not from why it happened, but from how you choose to live afterward. You can create meaning through the compassion you offer others, the boundaries you build, the truth you speak, the wisdom you share, and the life you refuse to abandon. This is the strength Buddhism points toward. It is not loud. It does not need to prove itself. It does not pretend to be untouched. It feels the full weight of reality and still chooses not to be ruled by resentment. The unfairness may remain unfair. The loss may remain a loss. The past may never provide the answer you wanted. Yet your mind can become free from the demand that these things must change before you are allowed to feel peace. You begin to understand that strength does not mean winning every battle. Sometimes strength means ending the battle inside your own mind. It means looking at what happened and saying, "I would not have chosen this. I do not approve of it. I may still feel pain when I remember it, but I accept that it is part of my past, and I will not give it complete ownership of my future." That is not defeat. That is the moment your energy returns. That is the moment the past loses some of its control. That is the moment you stop waiting for life to become fair and begin learning how to remain steady even when it is not. When you stop demanding that life be fair, another hidden demand becomes easier to see. The demand to know exactly what will happen next. You may accept that the past cannot be changed, yet still believe peace will come only when the future becomes clear. But life rarely gives complete answers before asking you to move forward. Uncertainty can make even a quiet mind feel threatened. A delayed message, an unclear medical result, a change at work, a strained relationship, or an unexpected expense can quickly fill the mind with fear. Nothing terrible may have happened yet, but the absence of certainty creates enough space for worry to take control. The mind begins searching for answers, and when it cannot find them, it often creates frightening ones. This is where many people lose their inner strength. They believe they are reacting to reality, but they are often reacting to possibilities. They suffer from events that have not happened, conversations that have not taken place, and outcomes that may never arrive. Buddhism teaches that uncertainty is not a mistake in life. It is part of life. Everything is changing, and because everything is changing, nothing can be completely guaranteed. People change their minds, bodies change, relationships change, plans change, opportunities appear and disappear. What feels permanent today may look completely different tomorrow. The mind does not like this. It wants solid ground. It wants promises that cannot be broken. It wants to know that the people it loves will always remain close, that its body will continue to work, that its plans will succeed, and that its future will unfold in a safe and understandable way. But the world cannot give such promises. The desire for certainty is understandable. Knowing what will happen can create a temporary feeling of safety. When the road ahead looks clear, the mind relaxes. It believes it is prepared. Yet this calm is often fragile because it depends on conditions staying predictable. As soon as something changes, the peace disappears. Real strength cannot depend entirely on knowing what comes next. If it does, every unanswered question becomes a threat. Every delay feels dangerous. Every change feels like the beginning of disaster. Buddhist practice offers a deeper kind of safety. It does not promise that everything will happen as you hope. It teaches you that even when the future is unclear, you can meet it with awareness, patience, and wisdom. You may not know what will happen, but you can learn to trust your ability to respond. This is different from trusting that nothing painful will occur. That kind of trust is easily broken. Buddhist strength comes from understanding that difficulty may arise, but you do not need to face all of it today. You only need to meet the moment that is actually in front of you. The mind often tries to live several months or several years ahead. It wants to solve problems before they exist. It believes that if it worries long enough, it will discover a way to prevent every possible danger. But worry is not always preparation. Preparation produces a useful action. Worry often repeats the same questions without creating a solution. Preparation asks, "What can I do now?" Worry asks, "What if everything goes wrong?" Preparation ends when the necessary step has been taken. Worry continues because it is searching for a guarantee that does not exist. This difference is important. You may need to save money, make an appointment, have a difficult conversation, study for an examination, apply for work, or create a practical plan. These actions can reduce certain risks. But after doing what is possible, the mind may still demand complete assurance. It says, "How do I know this will work?" Sometimes you do not know. Strength is not always receiving an answer. Sometimes it is continuing wisely without one. A mind that needs certainty before acting often becomes trapped. It postpones decisions because no option feels completely safe. It studies every possibility, asks many people for advice, changes direction repeatedly, and still feels unable to choose. This can look like careful thinking, but beneath it may be fear. The person is not only trying to make a good decision, they are trying to remove every chance of regret. They want proof that one path will lead to happiness and the other will not. Yet most important choices do not come with that proof. You may choose a career and later discover it does not suit you. You may trust someone and learn something unexpected. You may move to a new place and face difficulties you did not predict. You may reject an opportunity and later wonder what would have happened. Every path contains unknowns. The demand for certainty turns decision-making into emotional torture because the mind wants knowledge that belongs only to the future. It tries to stand at the beginning of the road and see every turn before taking the first step. Buddhism teaches you to act with clear intention rather than perfect knowledge. You consider what you know. You examine your motives. You pay attention to consequences. You choose as wisely as you can. Then you accept that the result will be shaped by many conditions. A wise decision can still produce a difficult outcome. A poor decision can sometimes appear to succeed for a while. Outcomes do not always reveal the quality of your intention immediately. This is why you cannot judge every choice only by what happened afterward. You must also ask whether you acted honestly, carefully, and with the understanding available to you at the time. When you accept this, regret becomes less destructive. You can learn without demanding that your past self should have predicted everything. The need for certainty also appears strongly in relationships. You may want to know exactly how someone feels, whether they will stay, whether they are telling the truth, or whether the relationship will still exist years from now. The mind begins looking for signs. A change in tone feels meaningful. A delayed reply creates fear. A quiet day becomes evidence that something is wrong. You may ask for reassurance, receive it, feel calm for a few hours, and then need it again. This happens because reassurance does not heal the deeper fear. It gives temporary relief, but the mind soon finds another question. What if they change their mind? What if they are hiding something? What if I lose them? No person can provide enough reassurance to remove all uncertainty. Even sincere promises cannot control the future. People may mean what they say today, yet life can still change them tomorrow. This does not mean trust is foolish. It means trust cannot be the same as certainty. Trust is allowing a relationship to unfold while paying attention to reality. Certainty is demanding proof that pain will never occur. Trust remains awake. Certainty wants to sleep without risk. Healthy trust is built through consistent actions, honesty, respect, and time. Even then, it is not a guarantee. It is a reasonable willingness to remain open based on what has been shown. A strong mind understands this and does not force another person to carry the full responsibility for its sense of safety. It can ask honest questions and communicate needs, but it also learns to calm itself when answers are not immediately available. Without this inner work, love becomes constant investigation. The relationship is no longer experienced, it is monitored. The person may believe they are protecting themselves, but they are often losing the present while guarding against a future loss. Buddhist awareness brings the mind back to what is actually happening. Is there real evidence of danger, or is fear filling an empty space? Is a conversation needed, or is the mind demanding another promise? Is there a clear problem, or only discomfort with not knowing? These questions do not dismiss intuition. Sometimes uncertainty is created by inconsistent behavior, dishonesty, or a lack of communication. In such cases, clarity should be sought. Boundaries may be needed, but not every uncomfortable feeling is a warning. Sometimes it is simply the mind meeting the limits of control. Learning to distinguish between real danger and imagined danger is part of mental training. Real danger usually points toward a specific response. Imagined danger often multiplies without end. Solve one imagined problem and another appears. Receive one answer and another question follows. The fearful mind believes that more thinking will finally produce safety. Instead, it often creates a larger collection of frightening possibilities. This is why Buddhism places great value on returning to direct experience. When the mind races into the future, you return to the body. You notice your breathing. You feel your feet touching the ground. You observe the sounds around you. You recognize the difference between what is happening now and what the mind says might happen later. This is not an attempt to ignore the future. It is a way of refusing to suffer from the future before it arrives. At this moment, you may be safe. At this moment, there may be one small action available. At this moment, you may have enough strength to take the next step. The future is rarely faced all at once. It arrives as a series of present moments. When you understand this, enormous problems become more manageable. You may not know how you will handle the entire year, but you can handle today. You may not know how the situation will end, but you can choose your next response. You may not know whether the plan will succeed, but you can complete the work in front of you. The mind wants the whole map. Life often gives only the next piece of the road. A person who refuses to move without the whole map remains stuck. A person who learns to walk carefully with limited sight develops courage. Courage is not certainty. Courage exists because certainty is absent. You do not need courage when the outcome is guaranteed. You need courage when you care deeply, know there is risk, and still choose to act according to your values. This is why uncertainty can become a place of growth. It reveals whether your peace depends on external control or inner stability. It exposes how quickly the mind creates fear when it cannot predict what comes next. Without uncertainty, you might never discover these habits. You might mistake a controlled life for a strong mind, but control is not the same as strength. A person can control their routine, avoid change, stay within familiar places, and refuse uncertain opportunities. This may reduce anxiety for a time, but it can make the mind more fragile. The smaller the safe area becomes, the more threatening everything outside it appears. Avoidance teaches the mind that discomfort is dangerous. Each time you escape an uncertain situation, you receive short relief. That relief feels like success, so the mind becomes more likely to escape again. Over time, life narrows. You may stop traveling because something could go wrong. You may refuse new relationships because they might end. You may avoid learning because you might fail. You may remain in an unhappy situation because the alternative is unknown. The familiar pain begins to feel safer than unfamiliar possibility. Buddhist wisdom asks you to notice this trap. Familiarity can create comfort, but comfort does not always mean peace. Sometimes it means the mind has built a small prison and decorated it with routine. Stepping into uncertainty does not mean taking foolish risks. It means refusing to let fear make every important decision. You can move slowly, you can prepare, you can seek advice, you can protect yourself. But there comes a point when thinking must become action. You cannot learn whether you can swim while standing forever beside the water. The first step into uncertainty may feel uncomfortable. The mind may immediately produce negative predictions. This does not mean you have chosen wrongly. It may simply mean you have entered a place where your old need for control cannot follow you. Stay present long enough, and the fear may begin to change. You discover that uncertainty is uncomfortable, but not always dangerous. You discover that you can feel doubt and still continue. You discover that not knowing does not make you helpless. This is how confidence is built. Not by eliminating every unknown, but by surviving contact with the unknown and realizing that you remain capable. The mind gradually learns a new message. I do not need complete certainty to be safe enough in this moment. This is a more realistic foundation for peace. The need for certainty also affects how people respond to change. Change often removes familiar roles, routines, and expectations. A child leaves home. A career ends. A friendship becomes distant. The body can no longer do something it once did easily. A new responsibility appears. The mind asks, "What will my life look like now?" Sometimes there is no immediate answer. This empty space can feel frightening because the old identity is weakening while the new one has not yet formed. You are no longer who you were, but you do not yet know who you are becoming. Many people rush to fill this space. They make quick decisions, return to unhealthy relationships, or cling to old habits because uncertainty feels unbearable. Buddhism teaches patience during these in-between periods. Not every empty space must be filled immediately. Sometimes confusion is part of change. Sometimes clarity needs time to emerge. A seed beneath the soil does not look like progress. An old form has ended, but the new form is still developing where it cannot yet be seen. The mind may interpret this delay as danger. It says, "Nothing is happening. I am lost. I need an answer now." But forcing an answer can lead you toward what is available rather than what is right. Patience allows deeper understanding to appear. It gives emotion time to settle. It creates room for information that was not visible at first. It prevents fear from making permanent choices during a temporary state of confusion. This does not mean waiting forever. It means knowing when action is necessary and when the mind is only trying to escape the discomfort of uncertainty. Sometimes the wisest answer is, "I do not know yet." Many people are ashamed to say this. They believe strength means always having a plan. They pretend to be certain because uncertainty feels like weakness, but false certainty can be dangerous. It can make a person ignore new information, defend poor decisions, and refuse to change direction. The need to appear sure becomes more important than seeing the truth. Buddhist wisdom values a beginner's mind. This is a mind that remains open, curious, and willing to learn. It does not assume it already understands everything. It can say, "My current view may be incomplete." This humility creates flexibility. A rigid mind breaks when reality contradicts it. A flexible mind adjusts. When plans change, flexibility asks, "What is needed now?" When new facts appear, it updates its understanding. When a belief causes harm, it examines the belief instead of protecting it at all costs. The need for certainty often hides inside strong opinions. The mind becomes attached to being right because being wrong feels unsafe. If its belief changes, it fears losing control, identity, or respect. So it stops listening. Buddhism teaches that views are tools, not permanent possessions. A useful view helps you understand and act wisely. When reality shows that the view is incomplete, wisdom allows it to change. This does not mean having no principles. It means holding your understanding with enough humility to continue learning. Certainty can also become a way of avoiding emotional pain. A person may demand an explanation after a relationship ends because uncertainty feels harder than rejection. They believe that knowing every reason will bring peace. Sometimes explanations help, but sometimes no explanation feels complete because the real pain is not confusion, it is loss. The mind keeps asking questions because questions feel active. Grief feels helpless. Searching for answers becomes a way of delaying the moment when the person must accept that something has ended. You may understand every detail and still feel hurt. Information cannot remove every emotion. At some point, the question changes from, "Why did this happen?" to, "How will I care for myself now that it has happened?" That question leads toward healing. The first question may keep you attached to someone else's mind. The second returns you to your own life. This is not giving up on understanding. It is recognizing the limit of understanding. Some situations contain many causes. Some people do not fully understand their own actions. Some decisions are shaped by fear, timing, confusion, and emotions that cannot be explained in one clear sentence. The desire for a perfect explanation can keep you waiting for something no person can provide. Buddhist acceptance allows mystery to remain where certainty is unavailable. It says, "I may never know everything, but I can still move forward with what I know." This is especially important when facing illness, aging, and death. These realities reveal the limits of human control more clearly than almost anything else. You can care for your body, seek treatment, eat wisely, rest, and follow medical advice. These actions matter, yet no one can guarantee perfect health or endless life. The mind may respond by avoiding the subject completely or thinking about it constantly. Both reactions are attempts to control fear. Buddhism encourages direct but gentle awareness. Life is temporary. The body changes. Time cannot be held. This truth is not meant to create despair. It is meant to awaken attention. When you know that time is uncertain, ordinary moments become more valuable. A conversation receives your full presence. A meal becomes something to appreciate. You stop postponing every meaningful action as though the future has promised unlimited opportunities. Awareness of uncertainty can make life more honest. You say what should be said. You stop carrying small resentments. You spend time with people who matter. You begin the work you keep delaying. You recognize that later is a hope, not a guarantee. This is not living in fear of death. It is allowing the truth of change to deepen your gratitude for life. The need for certainty also creates suffering through comparison. You look at another person's life and believe they have a clear direction. Their progress appears steady. Their relationship appears secure. Their confidence seems natural. You compare their visible results to your private confusion, but you do not know the full reality of their life. You do not see every fear, mistake, delay, or unanswered question. Certainty often looks greater from a distance. Most people are moving through life with incomplete information. Some simply hide it better. Recognizing this can reduce shame. You are not failing because you do not have every answer. You are human. The goal is not to become a person who never feels uncertain. The goal is to become a person who does not collapse each time uncertainty appears. You learn to breathe before reacting. You notice the stories your mind creates. You separate useful planning from endless worry. You take the action available and release the demand for guarantees. Some days this practice will feel natural, other days fear will return strongly. You may search for reassurance, overthink a choice, or try to control someone's response. The important thing is to notice without attacking yourself. You can say, "My mind is looking for certainty because it wants to protect me." This creates compassion without obedience. You understand the fear, but you do not allow it to lead every decision. You thank the mind for trying to keep you safe, then return to reality. What do I actually know? What am I only predicting? What can I influence today? What must remain unknown for now? These questions bring order to mental confusion. Often you know less than your fear claims, but you also have more power than your fear admits. You may not know the outcome, but you can choose your preparation. You may not know another person's final decision, but you can communicate honestly. You may not know how long healing will take, but you can support the process. You may not know which opportunity will succeed, but you can continue developing your abilities. The future remains uncertain, but your values can remain clear. This is one of the strongest forms of stability. When circumstances change, values give direction. You may not know where the road leads, but you know how you want to walk it. You can choose honesty over manipulation, patience over panic, courage over avoidance, and compassion over cruelty. These choices do not guarantee a painless outcome. They protect the quality of the person you become while moving through the outcome. Buddhism trains the mind to place confidence in practice rather than prediction. Prediction says, "I will be calm when I know everything will work out." Practice says, "I will train myself to meet whatever happens with greater awareness." Prediction depends on the world. Practice develops within you. The more you practice, the less every change feels like an emergency. You still prepare, but you do not worship control. You still care about outcomes, but you do not hand them complete power over your peace. You begin to see that life has always been uncertain. The difference is that sometimes the uncertainty was hidden beneath routine. A normal day felt guaranteed only because it had happened many times before. But repetition is not a promise. Understanding this does not need to make you afraid. It can make you humble and awake. It can help you hold your plans lightly, love people deeply, and appreciate stability without believing it will last forever. When change arrives, you do not need to say, "This was never supposed to happen." You can say, "I did not expect this, but change has always been part of life. Let me see what this moment requires." That response contains strength. It does not remove sadness. It prevents sadness from becoming helpless panic. It does not remove fear. It stops fear from creating 10 disasters before one difficulty has fully appeared. A mind that demands certainty will always find reasons to feel unsafe because there will always be something it cannot know. A mind trained to live wisely without guarantees discovers a safety that does not depend on perfect conditions. The future may remain unclear. Someone may disappoint you. A plan may change. A door may close. A new responsibility may appear before you feel ready. Yet you can still pause, observe, and choose. You can remind yourself that uncertainty is not proof of disaster. It is simply the space where the next part of life has not yet revealed itself. You do not need to fill that space with fear. You can fill it with patience, careful action, and trust in your ability to meet one moment at a time. That is how change becomes less frightening. Not because you finally control everything, but because you no longer require complete control before allowing yourself to feel calm. You stop asking life to show you the entire journey. You ask only for the wisdom to take the next honest step. Learning to live without certainty teaches the mind that it does not need complete control to remain steady. But there is another place where strength can quietly disappear. It happens when pain stops being something you experience and becomes the way you define yourself. A painful moment can change how you see your entire life. One rejection can make you believe you are unwanted. One failure can convince you that you are incapable. One betrayal can make you feel foolish for ever trusting anyone. One season of grief can make you believe sadness is now your permanent nature. The event may have happened to you, but the mind begins to speak as though the event has become you. That is where pain becomes heavier. There is a deep difference between saying, "I am feeling hurt," and saying, "I am a damaged person." The first statement describes an experience. The second turns the experience into an identity. One leaves room for change. The other makes change feel impossible. Buddhism teaches us to observe what is happening within the mind without turning every emotion into a fixed truth about who we are. Sadness is present, but you are not sadness. Fear is present, but you are not fear. Shame is present, but you are not shame. These states may feel powerful, but they are still changing conditions. The mind often forgets this when pain is intense. Strong emotions make temporary experiences feel permanent. During a difficult night, the mind may tell you that you will always feel this way. During a painful loss, it may tell you that life will never feel meaningful again. During rejection, it may tell you that no one will ever value you. These thoughts feel convincing because they arrive at the same time as strong emotion. But emotion is not proof. A storm can cover the sky, but it does not become the sky. In the same way, pain can fill your awareness without becoming the whole of who you are. This is not easy to remember when suffering has lasted for a long time. Pain that remains for months or years can begin to feel like personality. You may no longer say, "I am going through a difficult period." You begin to say, "This is simply who I am now." You may introduce yourself through your wounds. You become the abandoned person, the betrayed person, the failure, the lonely one, the person whose life never worked out. The story becomes familiar. Familiarity makes it feel true, and repetition gives it strength. Every time you repeat the same identity, the mind learns to look for evidence that supports it. If you believe you are unwanted, you notice every delay, every silence, and every moment when someone chooses another person. You may ignore the kindness that is offered because it does not fit the story. If you believe you always fail, one mistake becomes proof, while 10 small successes disappear from attention. The identity becomes a filter. It does not only describe the past, it begins shaping the present. This is how a wound can continue controlling your life even after the original event has ended. The mind carries the conclusion into new situations. It expects the old pain to return. It approaches new people with old fear. It enters new opportunities with the belief that failure has already been decided. The person may think they are protecting themselves, but they are often repeating the emotional pattern of the past. Buddhism asks you to look closely at the stories you have attached to pain. The pain may be real, but the identity built around it may not be the full truth. You may have been rejected, but rejection does not mean you are unworthy. Someone may have failed to love you well, but that does not prove you are impossible to love. You may have made a serious mistake, but a mistake is not the whole measure of your life. You may have lost something important, but loss does not remove every remaining possibility. This distinction is important because the mind likes simple conclusions. It wants to turn one event into one clear meaning. This happened because I am not enough. They left because I am difficult. I failed because I am not talented. My life is painful because I am unlucky. These conclusions reduce uncertainty, but they often create unnecessary suffering. Sometimes a relationship ends because two people have different needs. Sometimes another person is emotionally unavailable. Sometimes timing is wrong. Sometimes a goal fails because the plan was incomplete, the conditions changed, or more experience was needed. Sometimes a painful event has many causes, not one personal defect. The mind may choose self-blame because it creates the illusion of explanation. A painful explanation can feel safer than no explanation. If you believe everything happened because something is wrong with you, at least the situation feels understandable. But this understanding is built on cruelty toward yourself. Buddhist awareness interrupts this habit. It asks, "What happened?" before asking, "What does this say about me?" Often the event says far less about your worth than your wounded mind claims. This does not mean avoiding responsibility. Sometimes your actions contributed to what happened. You may have spoken carelessly, ignored warning signs, acted from fear, or made a decision that caused harm. Buddhism does not teach you to deny this. It teaches you to see the action clearly without turning the action into your permanent identity. You can say, "I acted badly," without saying, "I am beyond goodness." You can say, "I made a poor choice," without saying, "I ruin everything." You can say, "I hurt someone," without saying, "I can never change." Responsibility becomes useful when it leads to understanding, apology, repair, and different behavior. It becomes destructive when it turns into endless shame. Shame does not always make people better. Often, it makes them hide. When a person believes they are bad at the deepest level, change can feel pointless. They think, "Why try? This is who I am." Buddhist practice creates another path. It separates the person from the behavior. The behavior can be examined. The consequences can be faced. The lesson can be learned. Yet the possibility of growth remains open. This is one reason identity can become dangerous. Fixed identity closes the door that change needs. A person who says, "I am an angry person," may stop questioning their anger. A person who says, "I am weak," may avoid every situation that could reveal strength. A person who says, "I am broken," may treat healing as something meant for other people. The label becomes permission to remain trapped. Buddhism teaches that what we call the self is not a solid, unchanging object. We are made of changing experiences, habits, thoughts, memories, reactions, and conditions. The person you were 10 years ago is not exactly the person reading these words now. Your body has changed. Your beliefs have changed. Your understanding has changed. Some fears have disappeared, while new concerns have appeared. You have already changed many times. This means the identity created by pain is not permanent either. The mind may resist this because identity brings a strange form of comfort. Even a painful identity can feel safer than not knowing who you are. If you have called yourself broken for years, releasing that label can feel confusing. You may wonder what remains without the story. Sometimes people hold on to pain because pain has become their connection to the past. Letting go feels like forgetting what happened. Healing feels like saying the event no longer mattered. Joy may even create guilt because it seems disloyal to what was lost. This can happen after grief. A person may believe that feeling better means they loved less. They may resist laughter, peace, or new connection because suffering has become proof of loyalty. But love is not measured by how long you remain wounded. You do not honor someone by refusing to live. You do not preserve a relationship by turning grief into your permanent home. The value of what was shared remains real even as the pain changes. Healing does not erase memory. It changes the way memory lives inside you. At first, a memory may enter like a sharp blade. Later, it may arrive with sadness and tenderness. Eventually, it may become part of your life story without controlling your entire day. The event remains, but your relationship with it changes. This is why Buddhism encourages observation. When sadness appears, you notice it without demanding that it leave immediately. You also avoid building a new identity around it. You can say, "Sadness is here." This simple language creates space. It does not say, "I should not feel sad." It does not say, "I will always be sad." It only recognizes what is present. The same practice can be used with anger, fear, shame, loneliness, jealousy, or disappointment. Anger is present. Fear has appeared. Loneliness is moving through me. These words may sound small, but they change the relationship between you and the feeling. You are no longer completely merged with it. When you say, "I am angry," the emotion can seem to own your entire being. When you say, "Anger is present," you become aware that another part of you is watching it. The observer is not cold or distant, it is simply not controlled. This observing mind can notice where the emotion appears in the body. Tightness in the chest, heat in the face, pressure behind the eyes, a heavy feeling in the stomach, restlessness in the hands. By paying attention to the physical experience, you stop feeding the emotion only through thought. You recognize it as a changing process in the body. Emotions rise, remain for a time, and change. Thoughts may keep them alive longer, but the original wave is not permanent. A painful identity ignores this movement. It says, "This feeling is who I am." Observation says, "This feeling is passing through." That difference creates hope without forcing false positivity. Buddhism does not ask you to replace every painful thought with a cheerful one. It does not demand that you pretend to feel whole when you are deeply hurt. Forced positivity can become another form of denial. You do not need to say, "Everything is wonderful," when it is not. You can say, "This is painful, but it is not the whole of me." That is honest strength. Pain may be one part of your present experience, but other parts still exist. You may be grieving and still capable of kindness. You may be afraid and still make a brave choice. You may feel rejected and still offer love to another person. You may be disappointed and still remain disciplined. Human beings can hold more than one truth at the same time. The mind often reduces itself to the loudest emotion. Buddhism helps you see the wider picture. You are not only what hurts, you are also awareness, choice, memory, intention, patience, and the ability to begin again. This wider view is especially important after failure. Failure can quickly become an identity because society often celebrates results and hides struggle. You may look at successful people and assume they have always been confident, disciplined, and clear. Then your own mistake feels like proof that you do not belong. But failure is information, not identity. It reveals that a method did not work, preparation was not enough, timing was poor, or a skill needs development. It may show that the goal itself was not right for you. None of these meanings prove that you are permanently incapable. The person who learns from failure is not the same person who entered it. Experience has been gained. Weaknesses have become visible. Understanding has deepened. The failure may have closed one door while opening awareness that did not exist before. If you call yourself a failure, you throw away the lesson and keep only the pain. Buddhist wisdom encourages a different response. See the result clearly. Do not hide from it. Do not exaggerate it. Ask what it teaches. Then continue. The same is true with rejection. Rejection hurts because it touches the desire to belong, be chosen, and be valued. The mind may turn one person's decision into a statement about your entire worth. But another person's choice is shaped by their preferences, fears, readiness, history, and needs. You may not fit what they are seeking. That can hurt without making you inferior. Not being chosen in one place does not mean you are unworthy everywhere. A key does not become useless because it does not open one door. The mind may still feel pain. Let the pain be honest. Do not add the belief that your value has been cancelled. This is how pain becomes lighter. Not because the event matters less, but because you stop placing your whole identity beneath it. There are also people who build an identity around being strong. This may sound positive, but it can create another kind of suffering. They believe strong people never cry, never ask for help, and never admit confusion. When pain comes, they hide it because it threatens the identity they have created. This kind of strength is fragile. It depends on appearance. Buddhist strength allows vulnerability. It does not fear tears. It does not confuse support with weakness. It understands that pain can be acknowledged without being obeyed. You can be strong and tired, strong and grieving, strong and uncertain, strong and in need of help. Strength is not the absence of human emotion. It is the ability to meet emotion without losing awareness. When you make pain your identity, you may also begin arranging your life around protecting the wound. You avoid certain places, conversations, opportunities, or people. Some protection may be necessary for a time, especially after serious harm. But protection can slowly become a permanent way of living. You stop asking whether the danger is still present. The mind continues responding to the past while the present has changed. This can happen after betrayal. You may enter every new relationship expecting dishonesty. You watch for signs constantly. You test people. You withdraw before they can leave. You interpret small mistakes as proof that everyone is the same. The original betrayal is no longer happening, but its identity continues making decisions. Healing requires noticing when protection has become imprisonment. You can keep wisdom without keeping constant fear. You can remember the lesson without treating every person as the one who hurt you. This does not happen through blind trust. It happens through careful observation of what is actually present. Does this person show honesty? Do their actions match their words? Are your boundaries respected? Is the fear responding to them or to someone from your past? These questions help the mind separate memory from reality. Without this separation, old pain borrows the face of every new person. The same pattern can appear after long periods of struggle. A person who has suffered for years may become attached to the role of the one who always endures. They may reject help because independence has become part of their identity. They may choose difficult situations because peace feels unfamiliar. Calm can even feel suspicious. The nervous system becomes used to tension. When life becomes quiet, the mind searches for a problem. It does not know how to rest without waiting for something bad to happen. This is not a personal failure. It is a learned pattern. But learned patterns can be changed. The change begins with noticing. You observe the moment when peace feels uncomfortable. You recognize the urge to create conflict, withdraw, or search for danger. Instead of following the urge immediately, you remain with the quiet. Little by little, the mind learns that peace is not a trap. Healing often requires becoming comfortable with experiences that pain once made unfamiliar: safety, trust, rest, joy, and hope. At first, These may feel more frightening than sadness because sadness is known, but familiarity does not make suffering your true nature. You are allowed to learn a different way of being. This does not mean returning to who you were before the pain. Sometimes that person no longer exists. Healing may create someone new, more aware, more careful, more compassionate, and more honest. The goal is not always to become your old self again. The old self may have lacked the understanding you now possess. The new self can carry the experience without becoming trapped inside it. This is a powerful shift. You stop asking, "How do I return to the person I was?" and begin asking, "Who can I become with what I now understand?" The first question looks backward. The second creates movement. Buddhism teaches that clinging creates suffering. We usually think of clinging as attachment to people, possessions, or plans. But we can also cling to identity. We can cling to being the victim, the rejected one, the helper, the strong one, the forgotten one, or the person who never gets a chance. These identities may contain truth, but they are not complete. You may have been a victim of harm. That truth should not be denied. Yet victimhood does not need to become the final shape of your life. You are also a survivor, a learner, and a person with choices that still matter. The word you use changes where attention goes. Victim may describe what was done to you. It should not define everything you can become. This does not place responsibility for the harm on you. The responsibility remains with the person who caused it. Your responsibility begins with how you protect and care for your life afterward. That responsibility is not blame, it is power. It means someone may have influenced your past, but they do not deserve endless control over your future. The identity built from pain often keeps the person who hurt you alive inside your decisions. You may no longer speak to them, yet their actions still determine whom you trust, what you avoid, and how much joy you allow yourself. Freedom begins when you notice this. You may not be able to remove every effect immediately, but each new choice can reduce their influence. You speak when you once stayed silent. You rest without apologizing. You leave situations that repeat old harm. You accept care without assuming it must be earned through suffering. These actions build a new relationship with yourself. Language plays an important role in this process. The words you use repeatedly become instructions for the mind. I always ruin things. No one ever stays. I am too damaged. My life is over. These statements sound final. They leave no room for evidence, growth, or change. A more honest form of language might be, I have made mistakes and I am learning. Some people have left, and some relationships may still become meaningful. I am carrying pain, and healing is still possible. This part of my life has ended, but my whole life has not. These are not empty affirmations. They are balanced statements. They include the pain without allowing it to become the entire truth. The mind may resist them at first. Old identities are strengthened by years of repetition. One new sentence will not immediately remove them, but every time you speak with greater accuracy, you weaken the old story. Buddhist practice is built on repetition. You return to awareness again and again. You do not expect one moment of insight to erase years of habit. When the old identity appears, you notice it. My mind is telling the broken story again. You do not fight it with hatred. You do not blindly believe it. You let it be seen. What is seen clearly becomes less powerful. You can then ask, what else is true? Perhaps you were abandoned, and you are also learning how to stay present for yourself. Perhaps you failed, and you are now better prepared. Perhaps you are grieving, and love still exists in other forms. Perhaps you feel lonely, and you are still capable of creating connection. Pain narrows attention. Awareness widens it. Another reason people cling to painful identity is that it can bring understanding from others. When people recognize your struggle, you may finally feel seen. This is important. Everyone needs compassion. But there is a danger when connection depends only on remaining wounded. You may fear that healing will make others care less. You may unconsciously keep telling the same story because it has become the main way you receive attention. This does not make you manipulative. It may mean the pain has become your most familiar language of connection. Healing asks you to discover other ways of being known. You can be seen through your values, humor, wisdom, creativity, kindness, and interests. You do not need to hide your wounds, but they do not need to become your only introduction. You are more than what happened to you. This truth can feel strange after years of suffering, but it is necessary. The process of releasing identity may bring grief of its own. You may realize how many choices were shaped by a belief that was never fully true. You may see opportunities you avoided and relationships you pushed away. Do not turn this awareness into another reason to attack yourself. You made those choices while trying to protect yourself. The protection may have become limiting, but it began as an attempt to survive. Compassion allows you to thank the old pattern for what it tried to do while choosing not to continue living beneath it. You can say, "This identity helped me make sense of pain, but I do not need it to lead me anymore." That is a mature form of release. It does not insult the person you were. It recognizes that what once helped may no longer be helpful. Buddhism reminds us that change is always taking place. This truth can feel frightening when we want good things to remain, but it becomes comforting when we are suffering. If everything changes, then this pain can change too. The feeling may not disappear as quickly as you want. The memory may remain. The loss may always matter. But the form of the suffering can change. What feels unbearable today may one day become something you can carry with gentleness. What controls your thoughts now may later become a quiet part of your history. You do not need to know exactly when this change will happen. You only need to stop declaring that it never can. A fixed identity says, "I will always be this way." Buddhist awareness says, "This is what is present now." The word "now" creates a doorway. It respects the current truth without turning it into a lifelong sentence. You may feel broken now. You may feel lost now. You may feel ashamed now. But now is not forever. The mind becomes stronger when it learns to hold pain without building its home inside it. It allows tears without becoming hopeless. It remembers without constantly reopening the wound. It accepts the lesson without turning the lesson into a label. This is not forgetting. It is integration. The painful experience becomes one piece of a larger life. It no longer demands to be the center of every decision. You begin to notice qualities that survived: your ability to care, your desire to grow, your courage to face another day, your willingness to understand. These may have been hidden beneath pain, but they were never completely destroyed. You do not need to become untouched by what happened. You only need to stop allowing it to speak as though it is the final authority on who you are. Pain may say, "You are broken." Awareness can answer, "I am hurting and I am still changing." Pain may say, "You are unworthy." Awareness can answer, "I was rejected, but one rejection cannot measure my entire value." Pain may say, "You have failed." Awareness can answer, "Something did not work, and I can still learn." Pain may say, "You will never recover." Awareness can answer, "I do not know how long healing will take, but change is already part of life." These responses are not arguments. They are reminders of a wider truth. The strongest mind is not the one that never carries pain. It is the one that refuses to confuse pain with identity. It knows that emotions are visitors, not owners. It knows that memories are part of the mind, not commands for the future. It knows that a difficult chapter can influence the story without becoming the whole book. You may still have days when the old label returns. A painful event may make you feel small again. Someone's words may touch the wound. You may briefly become the person you thought you had outgrown. Do not mistake a returning feeling for a complete return to the past. The fact that you noticed it already shows awareness. You can pause, breathe, and remember that the old identity is a habit, not a destiny. Then you choose again. You choose language that leaves room for change. You choose actions that support healing. You choose not to use one painful moment as evidence against your entire life. Each choice creates distance between you and the label. Over time, you stop saying, "This is who I am." You begin saying, "This is something I have lived through." That sentence carries history without surrendering the future. It allows you to honor the pain, learn from it, and still move toward a life that is larger than what hurt you. This is the space where healing begins. Not when every difficult emotion disappears, but when you finally understand that no emotion, rejection, failure, loss, or disappointment has the power to define the whole of you. Once you stop calling pain your identity, you begin to see another habit that keeps it close. The wound may belong to the past, but the mind can carry it into the present by replaying it again and again. A memory can return so clearly that your body reacts as though the event is happening now. Your chest tightens, your face becomes warm, your breathing changes, anger rises, sadness settles over you. The person who hurt you may be far away, yet one thought can bring their voice, their words, and the entire moment back into the room. This is how an old event receives new life. The past itself is no longer occurring. What remains is a memory, but the mind can turn that memory into a fresh emotional experience. It repeats the betrayal, the argument, the embarrassing mistake, or the painful goodbye. Each replay adds another layer of feeling. The original wound came from what happened. The continuing wound often comes from how many times the mind returns and feeds it. You may believe you are thinking about the past because you need to understand it. Sometimes that is true. Reflection can reveal a lesson, expose a pattern, or help you make a wiser decision. But there is a point where reflection stops producing understanding and begins producing suffering. The mind asks the same questions but finds no new answers. Why did they do that? How could I have trusted them? Why did I not see it sooner? What should I have said? What would have happened if I had chosen differently? These questions may continue for months because the mind believes one more replay will finally create peace. It searches the memory as though a hidden answer is buried inside it. Yet each return often produces the same pain, the same anger, and the same helplessness. This is not always problem-solving. Sometimes it is repetition wearing the clothing of reflection. Buddhism teaches us to notice the difference. Useful reflection has direction. It leads toward a clearer understanding, a decision, a lesson, or an action. Mental replay moves in circles. It returns to the same scene without changing anything. Useful reflection may say, "I ignored signs because I was afraid to lose the relationship. In the future, I will pay attention earlier." Replaying says, "How could I have been so foolish?" 100 different ways. Useful reflection may say, "I spoke from anger and caused harm. I need to apologize and learn to pause." Replaying says, "I cannot believe I said that," every night without making repair. One creates wisdom, the other creates punishment. The mind often replays pain because it is trying to protect you. It believes that if it studies the event carefully enough, it can prevent anything similar from happening again. It keeps reviewing every detail, searching for the exact moment when danger first appeared. This protective effort is understandable. After being hurt, the mind wants certainty that the pain will never return. It says, I must understand everything, or I will be harmed again. But complete protection is impossible. You can learn from experience, become more careful, set stronger boundaries, and notice warning signs. Yet you cannot remove every risk from human life. When the search for safety has no ending, memory becomes a place of captivity. You remain emotionally connected to the event because the mind believes leaving it behind would make you careless. It confuses letting go with forgetting the lesson. But you do not need to keep touching a fire to remember that it burns. The lesson can remain even when the emotional replay stops. You can remember that someone was dishonest without repeating every conversation. You can understand that a choice was harmful without insulting yourself daily. You can recognize a pattern without living inside every detail of how it developed. Wisdom is able to carry the lesson in a lighter form. Replaying old pain is especially common when a conversation ended without the words you wanted to say. The mind creates a new version of the scene. In this version, you speak perfectly. You expose every lie. You explain how deeply you were hurt. The other person finally becomes silent, understands your pain, and admits that you were right. These imagined conversations can feel satisfying for a few moments. They give you the control you did not have during the real event. They allow you to become stronger, clearer, and more powerful than you felt at the time. But when the conversation ends inside your mind, reality remains unchanged. The person has not heard you. The apology has not arrived. The past has not been corrected. You are left with renewed anger because the mind has just made the event emotionally present again. The imagined victory becomes another form of attachment. You may spend years speaking to someone who is no longer listening. Buddhist practice asks you to notice when this begins. You do not need to shame yourself for it. You simply recognize, my mind is creating the conversation I wish had happened. This awareness interrupts the illusion. It reminds you that you are not solving the past. You are rehearsing it. You can then ask whether any real action remains available. Is there something that needs to be communicated calmly? Is an apology required? Is a boundary needed? Is there a practical step that can be taken? If action is possible and wise, take it. If action is impossible, harmful, or unnecessary, the practice becomes release. Release means allowing the unfinished conversation to remain unfinished. This can be difficult because the mind wants every story to end neatly. It wants good people to be understood, harmful people to admit the truth, and painful events to produce clear explanations. Real life often refuses such endings. Some people leave without explaining. Some arguments are never resolved. Some apologies never arrive. Some people remain convinced that they did nothing wrong. Peace cannot always wait for a perfect ending. Sometimes peace begins when you stop asking the past to give you one. This does not mean your voice was unimportant. It means you stop allowing another person's inability to listen to keep your mind trapped in endless speech. You may write what you wish you had said and never send it. You may speak it privately to understand your own feelings. You may share it with someone trustworthy. The purpose is not to keep the conversation alive, but to help the emotion move. There is a difference between expressing pain and feeding it. Expression brings what is hidden into awareness. It may involve tears, honest words, or quiet reflection. Afterward, there is often some movement or release. Feeding pain repeats the same story while increasing anger, blame, and helplessness. It may feel active, but it keeps the emotion in the same place. You can often tell the difference by noticing what happens afterward. Do you feel clearer or more consumed? Do you understand something new, or only feel the old injury again? Are you moving toward a wise choice, or returning to the beginning? The body can also reveal the difference. Mental replay often creates tension without resolution. The jaw tightens, the shoulders rise, the stomach becomes uneasy, sleep becomes difficult. The body does not always know that the event belongs to the past. It responds to vivid thoughts as though danger is near. This is why a memory can exhaust you even when you have done nothing physically demanding. You may spend an hour sitting quietly while your mind fights a battle from years ago. When the hour ends, your body feels as though it has survived the argument again. Buddhism brings attention back to the present body. When a painful memory appears, you notice the physical response before the story grows larger. You feel the breath, you notice the hands, you relax the jaw, you allow your feet to feel the floor. This does not erase the memory. It reminds the nervous system where you are. You are here, not there. The event is being remembered, not repeated. This distinction is simple but powerful. You can quietly say, "This is a memory. It is not happening now." The mind may still produce images and words. Let them pass without building another argument around them. You do not need to push them away. Pushing can create more struggle. Instead, you observe their movement. A sentence appears. An image follows. Anger rises. Then another thought comes. You watch without adding new material. This is how the memory loses energy. A fire continues when fuel is added. Old pain continues when it receives fresh anger, new accusations, and imagined endings. The memory may appear by itself, but you decide whether to keep feeding it. At first, this decision may not feel available. The thought arrives quickly, and within seconds you are fully inside the old event. You may notice only after several minutes. That noticing is still progress. You do not need to say, "I have failed again." You can simply return. Each return trains awareness to appear sooner. Perhaps next time you notice after 2 minutes, later after 30 seconds. Eventually, you may notice at the first sentence. The goal is not to stop every memory from appearing. The goal is to stop giving every memory unlimited time and attention. Painful memories often become stronger when they are connected to regret. Regret tells you that the past would have been different if only you had acted another way. If only I had left sooner. If only I had spoken. If only I had remained silent. If only I had taken the opportunity. If only I had paid attention. Some regrets contain real lessons, but they also contain an unfair expectation. They demand that your former self should have possessed the knowledge you gained only through the experience. You now see the warning sign because you lived through the consequence. At the time, you may have been hopeful, afraid, inexperienced, confused, or emotionally attached. The mind reviews the past with today's understanding and calls the earlier version of you foolish. This judgment ignores the distance you have traveled. A wiser response is to ask, "What does my regret show me about what matters now?" Perhaps regret shows that you value honesty. It may reveal the importance of courage, boundaries, time, or attention. It may show that you do not want to keep delaying your life. When regret becomes guidance, it serves the present. When it remains only punishment, it steals the present. You cannot return and give your former self today's wisdom, but you can allow today's self to live differently. That is how regret is transformed. The mind may also replay betrayal because it wants the emotional balance restored. Someone caused pain, yet they seem unaffected. You carry sleepless nights while they continue living. This can feel deeply unjust. The mind returns to the event because it does not want the other person to escape responsibility. It fears that letting go means they have won. But your continued suffering is not their punishment. They may not know how often you replay the memory. They may never understand how much energy it receives. The person most affected by the repetition is you. Letting go does not reward them. It removes your mind from their control. You can still remember what happened. You can maintain distance. You can refuse contact. You can protect others if necessary. None of this requires you to remain emotionally inside the original injury. The strongest boundary may be refusing to let the person continue occupying your thoughts. Anger sometimes resists this because anger feels like loyalty to justice. It says, if I stop feeling this, I am saying what happened was acceptable. But anger has already delivered its message. It told you that something was wrong, a limit was crossed, or a value was violated. Once you have understood the message, you do not need to keep the alarm ringing forever. An alarm is useful when danger is present. When danger has passed, endless noise prevents rest. Buddhist practice does not condemn anger, it observes it. Anger may contain energy, but without awareness it can burn the person carrying it. You can use its energy to make a clear decision, protect yourself, or create change. Then you allow it to soften instead of turning it into a permanent companion. Some memories remain active because they were never fully felt when the event occurred. You may have been too busy surviving, caring for others, working, or pretending to be strong. The emotion was pushed aside because there was no safe time to face it. Later, the memory returns repeatedly because part of the mind is asking to be acknowledged. In this case, simply distracting yourself may not help. The pain needs gentle attention, not endless analysis. You may need to admit, that hurt me more than I allowed myself to understand. You may need to grieve what was lost. Not only a person or opportunity, but also trust, innocence, time, security, or the future you expected. Grief is different from replay. Grief allows the reality of loss to be felt. Replay tries to change the event through thought. Grief may be painful, but it moves. Replay keeps returning to the same point. When you grieve honestly, you stop negotiating with what happened. You allow sadness to exist without creating a new argument. Tears may come, silence may be needed, the body may feel heavy. This is not weakness. It is the mind releasing what it could no longer carry in hidden form. You do not need to force grief to finish quickly, but you can avoid turning grief into a daily repetition of blame. One says, I miss what I lost. The other says, this should never have happened, and I cannot live unless it changes. The first allows love and sadness. The second fights reality. Buddhism trains you to feel deeply without holding tightly. This practice also applies to embarrassment and humiliation. The mind can replay one mistake long after everyone else has forgotten it. You remember what you said, how people looked at you, and what you wish you had done differently. The memory may return at night, and the body reacts with the same shame. Often the mind assumes that others remember the event as clearly as you do. In reality, most people are occupied with their own lives, mistakes, and concerns. Even when someone remembers, their memory cannot control your worth unless you continue giving it that power. Every person has moments they would change. Wisdom does not come from living without mistakes. It comes from refusing to waste the lesson. You can acknowledge embarrassment without creating a permanent picture of yourself from one moment. I behaved poorly. I was nervous. I misunderstood. I made a mistake. Then you repair what can be repaired and move forward. Humility allows you to be imperfect without collapsing into shame. The desire to erase every mistake is another demand for an impossible life. A mind that accepts its humanity does not need to replay every failure as proof against itself. Sometimes replay becomes a habit because the mind has too much empty space. During quiet moments, it returns to the most emotionally powerful story available. This is why painful memories often appear at night, during long journeys, or when you are alone. The silence itself is not the problem. It reveals what has been waiting beneath distraction. You can respond by developing a more conscious relationship with quiet. Instead of allowing the mind to choose the same wound every time, you bring gentle attention to the present. You listen to sounds, you notice breathing, you read something meaningful, you walk without feeding the story. You allow the mind to rest on direct experience. This is not running away from pain. It is teaching attention that it has other places to go. Attention is one of your most valuable resources. Whatever receives it repeatedly becomes stronger in your inner life. When you repeatedly attend to betrayal, betrayal becomes large. When you repeatedly attend to regret, regret becomes central. When you repeatedly attend to the present gradually becomes more real than the past. This does not happen through one decision. Attention must be redirected many times. The mind may return to the wound 10 times in 1 hour. You bring it back 10 times. Each return is part of the training. Do not wait until you feel willing. The mind may prefer the old story because it is emotionally familiar. You return because you understand that familiarity is not always freedom. Certain places, dates, songs, smells, or words can trigger old memories. These reminders may appear without warning. The emotion can rise before you understand why. When this happens, do not judge the reaction. The mind forms strong connections between experience and surroundings. A reminder can awaken an old response automatically. Awareness begins by naming the trigger. This song is connected to that period. This date brings back the loss. This tone of voice reminds me of the argument. Naming creates orientation. You understand why the emotion appeared, then you separate the reminder from the event. The song is happening now. The relationship ended then. The date has returned, but the original day has not. This helps the mind create a new experience around the old reminder. You may choose to listen to the song in a different place, with different people, or while doing something peaceful. You may create a new ritual on a difficult date. You may respond differently to the tone of voice that once made you afraid. New experiences do not erase old ones, but they can reduce their control. The brain learns through repetition. Just as old pain became linked to certain reminders, calm can gradually become linked to them as well. This requires patience. The first attempt may still feel difficult. The body needs time to learn that the present is different. Do not demand immediate freedom. Gentle repetition is more powerful than force. Another reason the mind replays pain is that the story has become part of how you explain your current life. You may tell yourself that you cannot trust because of what happened, cannot try because of the failure, or cannot love because of the loss. The past becomes the reason every new step feels impossible. The explanation may be understandable, but it can also become a hiding place. At some point, healing asks you to stop using the wound as permission to remain still. This does not mean rushing. It means taking one small action that the old story says you cannot take. You may speak to someone new, you may begin a project, you may return to a place you avoided, you may allow yourself to enjoy something without waiting for guilt. Each new action tells the mind that the past is not the only force shaping your life. The memory may still speak, but it is no longer the only voice. Buddhist teachings often compare the untrained mind to something restless, always jumping from one thought to another. Painful memories gain power because the mind follows them automatically. Training begins when you stop following every thought to its ending. A memory appears, you notice it. A sentence begins, you do not complete the entire argument. An image rises, you let it fade. This is not suppression. Suppression says, I must not think about this. Awareness says, "This thought has appeared, and I do not need to build upon it." The difference is important. What you fight may return with more force. What you observe without feeding often loses strength naturally. You are not trying to empty the mind by force. You are learning not to serve every thought that enters it. Some thoughts deserve action, others deserve only recognition and release. You can ask, is this memory teaching me something new, or is it asking me to suffer again? If there is a lesson, write it clearly, make it simple, keep it separate from the emotional story. The lesson is to speak earlier. The lesson is to watch actions. The lesson is to save before a crisis. The lesson is to ask for help. Once the lesson is clear, you no longer need to replay the entire event to remember it. Carry the wisdom, not the whole wound. Forgiveness may also become part of this process, but forgiveness should not be forced. It does not mean pretending harm was small or restoring a relationship that is unsafe. Forgiveness can simply mean deciding that you will no longer use your mind as a room where the offense is repeated every day. You may not feel warmth toward the person. You may never trust them again. Yet you can release the constant wish to rewrite or punish the past inside your thoughts. This form of forgiveness is freedom from mental repetition. It is often gradual. One day you notice that you went several hours without thinking about the event. Later, several days. The memory still returns, but it does not stay as long. Then one day you remember without feeling the same fire. This does not mean the experience was unimportant. It means it no longer controls the same amount of your life. Healing is sometimes quiet enough that you notice it only after it has happened. You realize the name no longer changes your breathing. The place no longer feels dangerous. The story can be told without losing the rest of the day. The wound has become a scar. A scar remembers what happened, but it is not an open injury. You cannot command this change, but you can support it by refusing to reopen the wound through repeated anger, self-attack, and imagined conversations. There will still be difficult days. Stress, tiredness, or loneliness may make an old memory feel fresh. This does not mean all progress has disappeared. A painful return is not the same as starting again. The mind may revisit an old place, but you are entering it with greater awareness. You know the pattern, you recognize the signs, you understand that the feeling will change. Instead of spending hours inside it, you may remain for a few minutes and return. That is strength. You do not measure healing by never thinking about the past. You measure it by how much control the past has when it appears. Can you notice the memory without becoming the entire story? Can you feel the emotion without creating another argument? Can you remember the lesson without punishing yourself? Can you return to the present without demanding that the memory disappear first? These are the signs of a trained mind. The past becomes weaker, not because it is erased, but because it is no longer fed with the same energy. You stop giving it fresh anger. You stop creating new scenes. You stop asking the same unanswered question as though repetition will force an answer. You allow the past to remain where it belongs. The memory may knock, but you do not have to invite it to stay all day. You can acknowledge it and say, I know this pain. I know what it taught me. I do not need to live through it again. Then you return to the life that is still happening. This is how Buddhism trains the mind to release old suffering. Not by forgetting, denying, or pretending, but by seeing clearly when remembrance has turned into repetition. You honor what happened by learning from it. You honor yourself by refusing to keep reopening it. The event may always be part of your story, but it does not need to remain the place where your attention lives. Your life is here, your breath is here, your next choice is here, and every time you return to what is here, the past loses a little more of the energy that once made it feel alive. As the past loses its power, another form of attachment begins to appear. You may stop replaying what happened, yet still feel trapped by the need for someone else to understand why it hurt. You may be ready to move forward, but part of you keeps looking back, hoping the person who misunderstood you will finally see the truth. Few things feel as lonely as being honest and still being judged wrongly. You explain what you meant, but they hear something different. You describe your pain, but they call you too sensitive. You speak about what happened, but they remember another version. You try to show your heart, yet they continue seeing you through suspicion, anger, or an old mistake. The mind struggles with this because it connects understanding with safety. It believes, if they understand me, they will stop judging me. If they see my intentions, they will treat me fairly. If they recognize my pain, I will finally feel at peace. Sometimes understanding does improve a situation. Honest communication can repair trust, remove confusion, and bring people closer. But there are also moments when every explanation becomes another attempt to control someone else's mind. You may explain yourself clearly and still be misunderstood. You may tell the truth and still not be believed. You may speak gently and still be heard through another person's anger. You may reveal your pain and still receive no compassion. This is painful, but Buddhism teaches that your peace cannot depend completely on how another person chooses to see you. People do not listen with empty minds. They listen through their own fears, memories, expectations, wounds, and beliefs. Two people can hear the same sentence and understand it in completely different ways. One hears honesty, another hears criticism. One sees a boundary, another sees rejection. One sees silence as calm, another sees it as disrespect. You cannot fully control the meaning another person gives to your actions. This does not remove your responsibility to communicate well. You should choose your words carefully. You should listen when someone says you caused harm. You should correct yourself when necessary. You should explain what is important when there is a real chance of understanding. But after you have spoken honestly, listened carefully, and taken responsibility for your part, there comes a point where more explanation no longer creates clarity. It only creates exhaustion. The need to be understood can become endless because the mind is not only trying to share information, it is trying to force a particular response. You do not merely want the other person to hear your words. You want them to agree that your intentions were good. You want them to admit that your pain was real. You want them to see you as innocent, reasonable, or worthy. When they do not, the mind keeps searching for a better sentence. You think, maybe I did not explain it properly. So you explain it again. You add more details. You change your tone. You describe your history. You provide examples. You show messages. You remind them of everything you have done. You try to make your inner world so clear that misunderstanding becomes impossible, yet the person may still refuse to see. At that point, the problem may not be a lack of information. It may be a lack of willingness. Some people misunderstand because they do not know enough. Others misunderstand because the wrong version of you serves them better. If they admit your pain was real, they may need to face their own behavior. If they recognize your good intentions, they may need to question their anger. If they accept your boundary, they may lose access to something they benefited from. Misunderstanding can protect a person from responsibility. They may call you selfish because you stopped giving beyond your limits. They may call you difficult because you began speaking honestly. They may call you ungrateful because you no longer accept control disguised as care. They may call you cold because you stopped participating in conversations that always left you wounded. Their description may say more about what they lost than about who you are. Buddhist wisdom asks you to notice the suffering created by trying to manage another person's opinion. The more you chase understanding, the more power you give them over your emotional state. A kind word from them makes you feel safe. A doubtful look makes you question yourself. Their approval gives you peace for a moment. Their criticism takes it away. Your inner balance begins moving according to their reactions. This is a fragile way to live because other people's minds are always changing. Someone may understand you today and misunderstand you tomorrow. They may praise you when your choices benefit them and criticize you when those same choices create inconvenience. If your peace depends on being seen correctly by everyone, peace will remain temporary. Buddhism teaches a steadier foundation. Act with honesty. Examine your motives. Correct what is harmful. Then let your peace rest in the integrity of your actions rather than the approval they receive. This requires strong self-awareness. You cannot simply say, "No one understands me," whenever someone challenges you. Sometimes another person sees something you are avoiding. Sometimes criticism reveals a blind spot. Sometimes what you call misunderstanding is someone accurately responding to harmful behavior. The goal is not to become closed to feedback. The goal is to separate useful feedback from the desperate need for universal approval. When someone criticizes you, pause before defending yourself. Ask whether there is truth in what they are saying. Did your words cause harm, even if harm was not your intention? Did you fail to consider their feelings? Are you protecting your image instead of examining your behavior? This kind of honest reflection is strength. If the criticism contains truth, accept the truth without collapsing into shame. You can apologize, you can learn, you can change. But if you have examined yourself carefully and the accusation remains false, distorted, or unfair, you do not need to spend your life trying to erase it from another person's mind. You can let them be wrong about you. This may feel almost impossible at first. The mind sees a false opinion as a threat. It wants to correct the record immediately. It believes silence will look like guilt. But not every accusation deserves a defense. Sometimes defending yourself gives more life to a story that would have weakened on its own. Sometimes the person is not seeking truth. They are seeking conflict, control, or emotional reaction. Every explanation gives them another sentence to twist. Silence in such moments is not defeat. It can be wisdom. You are not required to enter every courtroom where someone has appointed themselves judge. There are people who will misunderstand you no matter how carefully you speak because they are committed to their conclusion. They do not ask questions to learn. They ask questions to find a weakness. They do not listen to understand. They listen for words they can use against you. Trying to satisfy such a person can slowly destroy your confidence. You begin editing every sentence before speaking. You worry about how your expression will be interpreted. You over-explain simple decisions. You apologize for things that do not require apology. You soften every boundary until it no longer protects you. Eventually, you stop speaking from truth and start speaking from fear. This is one of the quiet costs of needing to be understood. You lose your natural voice. You no longer ask, "Is this honest?" You ask, "Will they approve?" You no longer ask, "Is this necessary?" You ask, "How can I say this without upsetting anyone?" You become more focused on controlling reactions than expressing reality. But no language can guarantee that another person will never feel disappointed, challenged, or uncomfortable. Sometimes truth creates discomfort because it reveals that something must change. A clear boundary may disappoint someone who was comfortable without one. An honest refusal may anger someone who expected automatic agreement. A personal decision may confuse people who had planned your life according to their preferences. Their discomfort does not always mean you communicated badly. Sometimes it means they heard you clearly. Buddhist teachings encourage right speech. This means speaking truthfully, kindly, and with purpose. It also means knowing when speech is helpful and when silence is wiser. Right speech is not endless speech. You do not need to repeat the truth until everyone agrees. You do not need to explain a boundary 20 times to someone who understood it the first time, but hoped persistence would make you remove it. One calm explanation may be enough. "I cannot continue this conversation when I am being insulted." I need time before I make this decision. I understand that you disagree, but this is the choice I am making. I have explained what happened. I will not keep arguing about it. These words are simple because inner clarity does not need to become a long performance. Over-explaining often appears when you do not fully trust your own right to choose. You search for a reason so powerful that no one can disagree. You believe your decision becomes valid only when other people understand it. But many choices do not require public approval. You may leave an environment that is damaging your well-being. You may change direction. You may stop giving access to someone who repeatedly disrespects you. You may refuse a role that no longer fits your life. Others may want an explanation, but their desire does not always create an obligation. You can offer enough information to be respectful while keeping private what belongs to you. This is not dishonesty. It is discernment. Not everyone is entitled to the full story behind your decisions. Some people ask from genuine care. Others ask because they want material for judgment, gossip, or pressure. Wisdom learns the difference. The need to be understood also becomes painful within families. People who have known you for years may continue relating to an older version of you. They remember who you were, how you reacted, and what role you played. When you change, they may not recognize you immediately. The person who always stayed silent begins speaking. The person who always solved everyone's problems begins saying no. The person who accepted disrespect begins creating distance. The family may describe this growth as selfishness, pride, or rebellion because the old version of you was easier for them to predict. You may feel tempted to explain your growth until they approve of it. But some people will only understand your change after seeing it remain consistent over time. Words cannot always prove transformation. Repeated action often speaks more clearly. You do not need to announce every lesson you have learned. Live it. Let your calmer response show the change. Let your boundaries show it. Let the way you leave unnecessary conflict show it. Let your ability to remain kind without surrendering your dignity show it. People may still resist, but your life no longer needs to pause while they adjust. Sometimes those closest to you will never fully understand your inner journey because they did not live inside your mind. They saw the decision, but not the nights of thought behind it. They saw you leave, but not how long you tried to stay. They saw the boundary, but not every moment that made it necessary. You may want them to feel the exact weight you carried, but they cannot completely enter your experience. No person can understand another person perfectly. Even in a close relationship, there will always be parts of you that are difficult to express. Some feelings have no simple language. Some experiences are too complex to fit inside one conversation. Accepting this can reduce disappointment. You can still seek deep connection, but you stop demanding perfect understanding as proof of love. Someone can care about you without fully understanding everything you feel. They can listen sincerely and still see the situation differently. Mature connection allows difference. It says, you may not experience this as I do, but can you respect that this is real for me? Respect is sometimes more important than complete agreement. Two people may disagree about an event while still treating each other with care. The problem begins when one person believes their view cancels the other person's experience. You can say, that was not my intention, while still acknowledging, I understand that it hurt you. Both truths can exist. The need to be understood often becomes an argument about whose experience is correct. One person defends intention, the other defends impact. Neither feels heard because both are trying to remove the other person's truth. Buddhist awareness allows more space. You do not have to abandon your perspective to recognize someone else's pain. You do not need to accept a false accusation to admit that your action had an effect you did not expect. This flexibility can repair relationships that defensiveness would destroy. However, flexibility should not become self-erasure. There are situations where another person constantly rewrites your experience. They tell you that you are remembering wrongly, feeling too much, or creating problems that do not exist. Over time, you may begin doubting your own mind. You explain yourself more because you hope they will finally confirm that your experience is valid. But someone who benefits from your confusion may never offer that confirmation. You need an inner point of reference. This does not mean assuming you are always right. It means trusting yourself enough to examine reality without handing another person complete authority over it. You can write down what happened. You can look at patterns rather than isolated promises. You can speak with someone trustworthy. You can notice whether conversations leave you clearer or more confused. The purpose is not to collect people who automatically agree with you. It is to restore your ability to see without constant fear of another person's judgment. Your experience does not become real only when someone else confirms it. Pain is not invalid because another person refuses to recognize it. A boundary is not unreasonable simply because someone dislikes it. Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering, and attachment to reputation is one of the most subtle forms. You want to be known as kind, wise, loyal, innocent, or good. These qualities may matter deeply to you. The problem begins when you become unable to tolerate anyone seeing you differently. Then reputation becomes a cage. You avoid necessary choices because someone might call you selfish. You remain silent because someone might call you disrespectful. You accept unfair treatment because leaving may make you look disloyal. You sacrifice your actual peace to protect an image in another person's mind. But reputation is never fully yours. It is created from fragments, memories, assumptions, and stories. Different people will hold different versions of you. To one person, you are generous. To another, you did not give enough. To one person, you are quiet and thoughtful. To another, you are distant. To one person, you are strong. To another, your boundaries seem harsh. Which version will you spend your life trying to control? Even the Buddha was misunderstood, criticized, and opposed. Wisdom does not make a person immune to false judgment. When you accept this, you stop using misunderstanding as proof that you have failed. You begin to understand that being seen incorrectly is sometimes part of living honestly. This does not mean becoming careless about your effect on others. A person who constantly hurts people and says, "I do not care what anyone thinks," is not free. They may simply be avoiding responsibility. True freedom includes concern without dependence. You care enough to listen. You care enough to repair harm. You care enough to speak respectfully, but you do not depend on universal approval to know whether your life has value. This balance requires patience. When someone misunderstands you, the first emotional reaction may be strong. You may feel heat, fear, or the urge to respond immediately. Pause before sending the message or making the call. Ask yourself what you are trying to achieve. Do you want to communicate something useful, or do you want relief from the discomfort of being judged? Do you believe the person can listen, or are you entering the same argument again? Is there new information to offer, or are you repeating yourself because you cannot tolerate their opinion? These questions can save you from conversations that only deepen exhaustion. Sometimes a brief explanation is wise. Sometimes a longer conversation is needed. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. Knowing the difference is part of mental training. Silence can be difficult because the mind continues writing the defense. You may lie awake creating sentences you could send. You may check whether the person has spoken about you. You may hope someone else will correct them. This is the same attachment in another form. Even without speaking, you are still trying to control the story. Buddhist practice asks you to release the story from your hands. Let others think what they think. Their opinion exists within their mind. You do not need to invite it into yours every hour. You can notice the discomfort and stay with it. My mind wants to be cleared of blame. My mind wants them to admit they were wrong. My mind believes I cannot be peaceful while they misunderstand me. Observe these thoughts without obeying them. The discomfort will rise and fall. You do not need to remove it through another explanation. With practice, you learn that being misunderstood is painful but survivable. It does not remove your integrity. It does not erase your truth. It does not prevent you from continuing your life. The fear becomes smaller when you stop treating it like an emergency. Another hidden reason people want to be understood is the hope that recognition will repair the past. You want someone to say, "Now I see what you went through." You believe those words will return something that was taken from you. Recognition can be healing, especially when your pain has been dismissed for a long time. But it cannot give back every lost year, missed opportunity, or broken trust. If it comes, receive it. If it does not, do not allow its absence to block healing. You can provide yourself with the acknowledgement you kept seeking outside. That was painful. I was carrying more than people knew. I tried with the understanding I had. I deserved to be treated with respect. Self-recognition is not the same as self-pity. It is refusing to abandon your own experience simply because others did not understand it. When you can witness your own pain honestly, you become less desperate for another person to prove that it existed. This inner witnessing creates quiet stability. You still value compassionate people. You still appreciate being heard. But understanding becomes a gift rather than a condition for peace. You no longer hand someone the power to decide whether your feelings are valid. This also changes how you listen to others. When you stop fighting to be understood every moment, you become more capable of understanding. You are no longer preparing a defense while the other person speaks. You can listen without believing that their experience automatically cancels yours. This creates room for real communication. Many conflicts continue because both people are starving to be understood and neither is willing to listen first. Each interruption says, "My pain matters more." Each defense says, "Your view threatens me." A trained mind can pause. It can say, "I want to understand what you heard before I explain what I meant." This does not make you weak. It makes the conversation clearer. Sometimes after listening fully, you will discover that the misunderstanding came from your words. You can correct them. Other times, you will discover that the person is reacting from an older wound that does not belong entirely to you. You can show compassion without accepting blame for everything they feel. This is an important boundary. Understanding someone's reaction does not mean taking responsibility for every part of it. You can say, "I understand why this reminded you of something painful, but that was not what I was doing." Compassion and clarity can exist together. The need to be understood may also influence the way you use social media or speak in groups. You may constantly watch how people react. A lack of response feels like rejection. A critical comment stays in your mind longer than many kind ones. The larger the audience, the more impossible complete understanding becomes. People see a sentence, a picture, or a short moment and create a whole story. They do not know your full life, yet the mind may treat their opinion as though it came from someone who deeply knows you. This gives strangers too much authority. Not every opinion deserves equal weight. Consider the source. Does this person know the situation? Have they shown wisdom, honesty, and care? Are they trying to help or only to provoke? Listening to everyone equally is not humility. It is confusion. Buddhist discernment means recognizing which voices contain useful guidance and which voices should pass without entering deeply. A person shouting from a distance should not always be louder in your mind than someone who has walked beside you for years. Even trusted people will sometimes misunderstand you. When this happens, you can communicate with patience, but you must also accept the limits of closeness. Love does not remove difference. Friendship does not create one mind. Family does not guarantee the same memory. You can remain connected without winning every disagreement. This requires letting go of the idea that peace means everyone must share your version. Sometimes peace means two people understand that they see the situation differently and choose not to injure each other over it. You say what is true for you. You listen to what is true for them. Then you decide whether the relationship can hold both perspectives. Some relationships can, others cannot. When a person demands that you deny your experience to keep the connection, the price may be too high. You can care about someone and still refuse to abandon yourself for their comfort. You can leave a conversation with respect, even when no agreement is reached. You can say, "I do not think repeating this will help us. I have heard your view and I have shared mine." Ending an unproductive conversation is not the same as running away. Sometimes it is the only way to stop communication from becoming harm. A strong mind knows when enough has been said. It does not chase someone down every road of misunderstanding. It does not answer every insult. It does not defend every choice before an audience that has already decided. This restraint protects energy for the people and actions that truly matter. There may still be sadness when someone important never understands you. Let that sadness be honest. Not every misunderstanding can be turned into a lesson that feels peaceful immediately. You may have to grieve the relationship you hope to have. You may have wanted a parent, partner, friend, or child to see you clearly, and they could not. Accepting this can hurt deeply because it touches the basic human desire to be known. But grief is healthier than endless performance. You stop becoming a different version of yourself in the hope that they will finally offer the understanding you need. You stop proving, explaining, and begging. You allow yourself to see the relationship as it is, not only as you wish it could become. This truth may create distance, but it also creates freedom. You can then seek connection where understanding is more possible. Not perfect understanding, but sincere listening, mutual respect, and room for honesty. You learn that healthy relationships do not require you to present evidence for every feeling. They may ask questions, but they do not place your inner life on trial. At the same time, you become responsible for giving others the kind of space you desire. You avoid quickly deciding what another person means. You ask before assuming. You listen beyond the first sentence. The pain of being misunderstood can make you more compassionate, not more demanding. You remember how it felt when someone reduced your whole character to one moment, so you resist doing the same to others. You allow people to be more complex than their mistakes. This is how suffering becomes wisdom. It does not only protect you, it changes the way you meet other human beings. Eventually, the need for everyone to understand you begins to loosen. You still explain when explanation is useful. You still apologize when you are wrong. You still value honest conversation, but you no longer chase every mind. You accept that some people will know your heart, some will know only a small part of you, and some will believe a version that was never true. Their belief may affect their relationship with you, but it does not need to decide your relationship with yourself. You begin asking a quieter question. Am I living in a way that I can respect? This question is within your reach. You can examine whether your actions match your values. You can notice when pride, fear, or anger shapes your choices. You can make corrections without waiting for public pressure. Inner honesty becomes more important than outer approval. That is not isolation. It is maturity. It allows you to receive praise without becoming dependent on it and criticism without being destroyed by it. Praise may feel good, but it does not become your identity. Criticism may hurt, but it does not automatically become truth. Both are received, examined, and allowed to pass. This is how peace becomes less controlled by other people's opinions. You may still feel the urge to explain yourself. Pause and decide whether the words will create understanding or only feed attachment. Sometimes speak, sometimes listen, sometimes correct yourself, sometimes walk away. The strength lies in not being forced by the urge. You no longer need every person to see you correctly before you can continue. You do not wait for universal agreement before choosing an honest life. You understand that your responsibility is to act with awareness, speak with care, and remain willing to learn. What others finally choose to believe is not completely yours to control. Some people may never understand why you changed. Some may never recognize what you endured. Some may never admit that they judged you unfairly. Let that truth hurt without letting it own you. You can still live with dignity. You can still choose kindness. You can still remain honest. You can still be at peace. The strongest mind is not one that wins every argument about who it is. It is one that knows itself clearly enough to stop begging every person for permission to exist as it is. When you release the need to be understood by everyone, you do not become silent or invisible. You become more careful about where your voice is placed. You offer truth where truth can be received. You offer explanation where there is genuine confusion. You offer accountability where you have caused harm. And where someone is committed to misunderstanding you, you offer distance. Then you return to your own mind and ask whether you acted honestly. When the answer is yes, you allow that to be enough. Releasing the need to be understood brings a deeper kind of peace, but that peace is soon tested by another question. After people have hurt you, can you remain kind without giving them another chance to wound you? Pain can change the way a person meets the world. Someone who once trusted easily begins questioning every intention. Someone who once spoke warmly becomes distant. Someone who once offered help freely begins protecting every part of themselves. From the outside, this may look like strength. They no longer cry in front of people. They no longer allow anyone close enough to disappoint them. They no longer expect care, loyalty, or honesty. But sometimes what looks like strength is only fear wearing harder clothing. When you have been hurt deeply, coldness can feel safer than kindness. If you stop caring, perhaps nothing can disappoint you. If you expect the worst, perhaps nothing can surprise you. If you keep everyone at a distance, perhaps no one will have enough access to betray you. This protection may reduce certain risks, but it also reduces life. It blocks harmful people, yet it may also block sincere people. It prevents some pain, but it can prevent love, friendship, trust, and meaningful connection from reaching you. Buddhism teaches a different form of strength. It does not ask you to remain open to everyone. It does not tell you to keep offering chances to people who repeatedly harm you. It teaches you to protect your peace without poisoning your heart. You can be compassionate without being available for mistreatment. You can forgive without rebuilding the relationship. You can understand why someone behaves badly without allowing their behavior to continue around you. You can wish a person well from a distance. This balance is difficult because many people confuse kindness with permission. They believe that being kind means always saying yes, always staying, always listening, and always offering another chance. They think compassion requires endless patience, even when patience is being used against them. But kindness without wisdom can become self-neglect. A person may keep forgiving the same betrayal while nothing changes. They may continue giving money to someone who refuses responsibility. They may keep answering calls filled with insults because they do not want to appear cruel. They may remain in a harmful relationship because they believe leaving would make them selfish. This is not always compassion. Sometimes it is fear of conflict, fear of rejection, or fear of being seen as a bad person. True compassion includes you. If your kindness protects everyone except you, it is incomplete. Buddhist wisdom does not teach that your well-being matters less than another person's comfort. It teaches care for living beings, and you are one of those beings. Your mind, body, dignity, and safety are also worthy of protection. This means a boundary can be an act of compassion. A boundary tells another person where your participation ends. It does not try to control what they do. It explains what you will do when a certain behavior occurs. You cannot force someone to stop shouting, but you can leave the conversation when shouting begins. You cannot force someone to become honest, but you can stop trusting promises that are repeatedly broken. You cannot force someone to respect your time, but you can stop changing your entire life whenever they make a last-minute demand. A boundary is not a punishment. It is information followed by action. Without action, a boundary becomes only a request. You may say, "Please do not speak to me that way," many times. If the behavior continues and nothing changes, the person learns that your words have no real consequence. They understand that they can cross the limit and still keep the same access to you. This does not mean you must react harshly. You can remain calm and firm. I will continue this conversation when we can speak respectfully. I am not able to lend you more money. I care about you, but I cannot solve this problem for you. I have forgiven what happened, but I am not returning to the same situation. These words do not attack anyone. They simply make your position clear. The difficulty often comes after the boundary is spoken. The other person may become angry. They may accuse you of changing. They may remind you of everything they have done for you. They may say you are selfish, proud, cold, or unforgiving. This is where many boundaries collapse. The person who set the limit begins feeling guilty. They start explaining too much. They soften the decision. They make an exception. Soon the old pattern returns. A boundary is tested not when it is spoken, but when someone dislikes it. You must learn to tolerate another person's disappointment without treating it as proof that you have done something wrong. Someone can be unhappy with your decision, and your decision can still be wise. The other person's anger may simply show that the old arrangement benefited them. They were comfortable when you had no limits. Your change creates inconvenience, so they call the inconvenience cruelty. Do not accept every emotional reaction as a moral judgment. Examine yourself honestly. Did you speak with unnecessary harshness? Did you act to humiliate or punish? Did you use the boundary to gain control? If so, correct your approach. But if the boundary protects your dignity and prevents repeated harm, discomfort does not make it wrong. Buddhist strength is not loud. It does not need insults, threats, or revenge to prove that it is serious. It can speak softly and remain firm. Some people raise their voices because they do not trust the strength of their position. Calmness feels too weak, so they add anger. But anger can make a necessary boundary look like an attack. A steady voice communicates something different. It says, "I am not trying to destroy you. I am simply no longer available for this." This calmness may take practice. When a limit has been crossed many times, old anger may rise quickly. You may remember every previous event at once. The present conversation becomes connected to years of frustration. Before responding, pause long enough to separate the current moment from the entire history. You do not need to release every stored emotion in one conversation. Say what is necessary now. Clarity is often more powerful than a long accusation. There is also a difference between compassion and rescue. Compassion sees another person's suffering and responds with care. Rescue assumes responsibility for fixing a life that belongs to someone else. You may care for someone who repeatedly makes harmful choices. Each time they face consequences, you step in. You pay the debt, make the excuse, solve the problem, or carry the responsibility. You call this kindness because you do not want them to suffer. but consequences sometimes teach what advice cannot. By removing every consequence, you may protect the behavior rather than the person. The individual learns that someone will always repair the damage. There is no reason to change, because the full cost of their choices never reaches them. Buddhist compassion is not blind. It asks what response will reduce suffering in a deeper and more lasting way. Immediate relief is not always the wisest help. Giving money may solve today's problem while continuing a pattern of carelessness. Making excuses may prevent embarrassment while strengthening dishonesty. Doing someone's work may protect them from failure while keeping them dependent. Sometimes the compassionate response is to allow another person to face what they created. This can feel cruel, especially when you are used to rescuing. You may see their distress and feel responsible, but another adult's discomfort is not always an emergency you must remove. You can offer support without taking over. You can listen without solving. You can encourage without carrying. You can care without becoming responsible for the result. This distinction protects both people. It protects you from exhaustion and protects the other person from becoming dependent on your sacrifice. Some people become easy to hurt because they ignore what behavior reveals. They listen to apologies but overlook patterns. They focus on a person's potential instead of their repeated choices. The person says they will change, and you believe the words because you want the relationship to improve. When the behavior returns, another apology follows. Hope begins again. Compassion can make you patient, but patience should not require blindness. A sincere apology includes more than regret. It includes responsibility, repair, and changed behavior. Without change, apology may become a tool for reopening the same door. You do not need to hate someone to believe their pattern. You can recognize that they have good qualities and still accept that they are not safe for you. Human beings are rarely completely good or completely bad. A person may be generous in one area and harmful in another. They may care about you and still lack the maturity to treat you well. Understanding complexity does not require continued access. You may say, "I believe you are struggling, but I cannot keep being harmed by that struggle." This is compassion joined with wisdom. Buddhism teaches that people act from causes and conditions. Harmful behavior may come from fear, ignorance, anger, insecurity, or unhealed pain. Seeing these causes can reduce hatred. You begin to understand that the person's actions did not appear from nowhere. But understanding the cause does not remove the effect. Someone's painful childhood may help explain why they control others. It does not make control acceptable. Their fear of abandonment may explain why they become jealous. It does not justify constant accusations. Their past betrayal may explain why they struggle to trust. It does not permit them to punish you for what someone else did. An explanation can create compassion, but it should not erase accountability. You can hold both truths at once. I understand why you struggle, and I will not accept the way you treat me. This is a stronger position than hatred because hatred often keeps you emotionally connected. It fills the mind with arguments, revenge, and the desire to see the other person suffer. Compassionate distance releases the need for punishment. It says, "I do not want harm for you, but I will not remain where harm continues." This protects the heart from bitterness. Bitterness may feel powerful because it promises that you will never be fooled again. It keeps the memory of harm close, believing that anger will keep you alert. But bitterness does not only affect the person who hurt you, it follows you into unrelated moments. It changes how you speak, whom you trust, and how quickly you expect disappointment. The person who caused the wound may be gone, but bitterness allows their influence to remain. Buddhism teaches that holding hatred is a form of continued suffering. You keep the harmful person present within your own mind. Releasing hatred does not mean returning to them. It means refusing to continue drinking the emotional poison created by what they did. Forgiveness can support this release, but forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many people believe forgiveness means restoring trust, forgetting the event, or acting as though nothing happened. These are separate decisions. You can forgive and still remember. You can forgive and still say no. You can forgive and still refuse contact. You can forgive someone internally without ever telling them. Forgiveness concerns what you continue carrying within yourself. Trust concerns what access the person has earned through behavior. Trust can be damaged in one moment and rebuilt only through consistent action over time. Forgiveness cannot create evidence that does not exist. If someone asks for forgiveness but becomes angry when you do not trust them immediately, they may be more interested in escaping consequences than repairing the relationship. A person who truly accepts responsibility understands that your caution is part of the damage they caused. They do not demand that you heal according to their schedule. You may choose to rebuild trust slowly. This can involve small steps, clear expectations, and close attention to whether words and actions match. You do not return to the same level of closeness simply because someone cried, apologized, or promised change. Emotion may be sincere, but sincerity in one moment does not guarantee stability. Time reveals what promises cannot. There are also situations where trust should not be rebuilt. Repeated abuse, manipulation, severe dishonesty, or continued refusal to take responsibility may make distance the wisest choice. Buddhism does not require you to stay close to danger to prove that your heart is pure. Leaving can be kind. It can stop you from responding with greater anger. It can prevent the relationship from creating more harm. It can allow both people to face reality instead of continuing a destructive pattern. Sometimes staying becomes a way of helping the problem survive. The fear of appearing unkind can keep people in situations that slowly destroy them. They worry about what others will say. They think a good person should keep trying. But effort is not always virtue. There are times when effort becomes refusal to accept what repeated behavior has already shown. You can spend years trying to teach respect to someone who benefits from disrespecting you. You can offer more love to a person who uses love as permission to remain careless. More kindness does not always correct harmful behavior. Kindness needs direction. Giving endlessly to a destructive pattern is not the same as helping a person grow. This is why wisdom is essential. Compassion asks, how can I reduce suffering? Wisdom asks, will this action actually reduce suffering, or will it continue the cause? Without wisdom, compassion can be manipulated. Manipulative people often study your kindness. They learn what creates guilt in you. They mention their pain when you try to hold them accountable. They turn your boundary into evidence that you do not care. Because you are compassionate, you begin comforting them even though they harmed you. The conversation shifts from their behavior to your tone, your timing, or your decision to speak. Soon, you are apologizing for having a limit. Recognizing this pattern does not require hatred. It requires attention. Do not let another person's distress erase the original issue. You can acknowledge their feelings and return to the concern. I understand that this is difficult to hear, but we still need to discuss what happened. I know you are upset, but my decision remains the same. I care about your feelings, but I will not accept responsibility for a choice you made. These statements prevent compassion from becoming surrender. True strength also means knowing the difference between a mistake and a pattern. Everyone can speak carelessly, forget something important, or react badly under pressure. A single mistake may need conversation and forgiveness. A pattern is different. It continues after the problem has been explained. The person knows the effect but repeats the behavior. Their regret appears mainly when consequences arrive. Judging one mistake too harshly can make you unforgiving. Ignoring a pattern can make you easy to hurt. Wisdom considers frequency, responsibility, and change. Does the person listen when you speak? Do they make excuses or take ownership? Does the behavior decrease or does only the apology improve? Are you allowed to have feelings or are you punished for mentioning them? These questions reveal more than promises. You do not need to wait until your heart is completely exhausted before accepting a pattern. Sometimes people remain too long because they believe endurance proves love. They treat their ability to tolerate pain as evidence of loyalty, but loyalty without self-respect becomes captivity. Love should not require you to become smaller, quieter, or constantly afraid. It should not require you to deny what you see. You can love someone and still decide that closeness is no longer healthy. Feelings do not create an obligation to stay. This truth can be painful because the heart may continue caring even after the mind understands that distance is necessary. You may miss the person. You may remember their good qualities. You may question whether leaving was too harsh. Missing someone does not mean the boundary was wrong. It means the relationship mattered. You can feel love and still choose safety. You can feel sadness and still remain firm. Strength does not require the absence of tenderness. In fact, remaining kind while leaving may require greater strength than becoming hateful. Hatred can make separation easier for a while because it removes complexity. The person becomes entirely bad, and you become entirely innocent. But life is rarely that simple. You can acknowledge the good moments without allowing them to cancel the harmful ones. You can appreciate what was real while accepting what could not continue. This balanced view allows you to move forward without denying your own history. Kindness toward yourself is equally important. People who have been hurt often become angry with themselves. They ask why they trusted, stayed, forgave, or failed to notice what now seems clear. They believe becoming harsh toward themselves will prevent another mistake. But self-attack does not create reliable wisdom. It creates fear and shame. You trusted because trust is part of connection. You stayed because you hoped. You forgave because you cared. These qualities were not the enemy. The problem was that they were offered without enough protection. You do not need to destroy your softness. You need to support it with discernment. The lesson is not never trust again. The lesson may be allow trust to grow according to evidence. The lesson is not stop caring. It may be do not let care erase your limits. The lesson is not become harder. It may be pay attention sooner. Pain often pushes the mind toward extremes. After giving too much, you may want to give nothing. After trusting the wrong person, you may want to trust no one. After staying too long, you may want to leave at the first difficulty. These extremes feel safe because they remove the need for careful judgment. But Buddhism teaches the middle path. You do not live without boundaries, and you do not build walls around your entire life. You learn to open gradually. A boundary has a door. A wall does not. A healthy boundary allows trustworthy people closer over time. It responds to behavior. A wall rejects everyone before they have shown who they are. Walls may feel protective, but they can keep you lonely long after the original danger has passed. The middle path asks you to remain awake. You notice whether someone respects small limits. You observe how they respond when you disagree. You watch whether they can apologize without becoming defensive. Trust is not given all at once. It grows through repeated evidence. This allows kindness to remain without becoming carelessness. Staying kind also does not mean staying quiet when someone is being harmed. Compassion sometimes requires strong speech. You may need to defend yourself, protect someone vulnerable, or name behavior that others want to hide. A gentle heart does not require a weak voice. Buddhist compassion is willing to confront harm because ignoring it allows suffering to continue. The purpose of confrontation, however, matters. Are you speaking to stop harm or to humiliate the person? Are you seeking clarity or revenge? Are your words necessary, or are they carrying years of uncontrolled anger? Firm speech can remain free from cruelty. You can describe behavior without attacking a person's entire character. What you did was dishonest is different from you are worthless. One addresses the action, the other tries to wound. When possible, protect dignity even while setting consequences. This does not mean using soft language that hides seriousness. It means refusing to become the harm you are opposing. There may be times when anger rises strongly. Do not pretend it is not there. Anger can reveal that your dignity has been ignored or your limit crossed. Use its energy to act, but do not let it choose every word. A brief pause can prevent a necessary response from becoming unnecessary damage. You may return to the conversation when your mind is clearer. You may write what you want to say and remove the parts meant only to hurt. This is not weakness. It is discipline. Anyone can strike back while consumed by anger. Strength is remaining in control of the person you choose to be. You do not need to prove that you were hurt by causing equal pain. Revenge may create a moment of satisfaction, but it ties your behavior to the behavior of the person who harmed you. They act cruelly, so you become cruel. They deceive, so you deceive. They insult, so you insult. Your values begin changing according to their actions. Buddhist strength refuses this control. It says, "Your behavior may influence my decisions, but it will not decide my character." This does not mean there are no consequences. A calm consequence can be stronger than emotional revenge. You may end the relationship, report the behavior, refuse access, or stop offering support. The action protects what matters without requiring hatred. Kindness is also shown in the way you stop carrying responsibility for how others feel about your boundaries. You can care that someone is disappointed without rushing to remove the disappointment. This is especially difficult when dealing with people you love. A child, sibling, parent, or friend may be struggling. You may want to do everything for them. Ask whether your help strengthens them or keeps them weak. Support should not always make life easier. Sometimes it should help a person become more capable. You can guide them while allowing them to make decisions. You can offer resources without taking complete responsibility. You can encourage them while letting them experience the result of their choices. This form of care may feel less loving in the moment, but it can be more respectful. It recognizes that the other person has a path they must walk. Rescuing can quietly communicate, "I do not believe you can handle your own life." Compassionate support says, "I care and I believe you must also participate in your own growth." There will be times when a person asks for more than you can give. You may have limited energy, money, or emotional strength. Saying no can bring guilt because their need is real. But a real need does not automatically mean you are the person required to meet it. You can care and still be unable to help. You can say, "I am sorry you are facing this, but I cannot provide what you are asking." Honesty is kinder than promising support you cannot sustain. When you give beyond your ability, resentment often follows. You begin feeling angry with the person for accepting what you offered. You may become impatient, cold, or exhausted. A clear no at the beginning can be kinder than a resentful yes. Buddhism encourages awareness of intention. Before helping, notice what is driving you. Is it genuine care, fear of rejection, desire to be needed, hope that the person will owe you? Help given with hidden expectations can later become a source of conflict. You may say you want nothing in return, yet feel hurt when your sacrifice is not recognized. This reveals that the gift contained an unspoken agreement. Healthy generosity gives within wise limits. It does not use sacrifice to purchase love, loyalty, or importance. You are allowed to give because you choose to, not because guilt forces you. This makes kindness cleaner and more peaceful. Staying kind also means avoiding the pleasure of seeing someone who hurt you suffer. Their difficulty may feel like justice. Part of you may think they finally deserve the pain they caused. This reaction is human, but feeding it keeps the heart tied to resentment. You do not need to celebrate their suffering to protect yourself. You can allow life to give its own lessons. Their consequences are not your entertainment. Compassion may simply mean refusing to add harm. You do not need to rescue them, comfort them, or return to them. You only choose not to become joyful about another person's pain. This protects your inner life. The goal is not to become a person who feels nothing negative. The goal is to notice harmful feelings without building a home for them. A bitter thought may arise. You see it. You do not add a story. You return to the kind of mind you want to develop. This practice is repeated many times. Kindness becomes strength when it is chosen consciously, not demanded by fear. You are kind because it matches your values, not because you cannot say no. You forgive because you want freedom, not because someone pressured you. You help because the help is wise, not because you need to be seen as good. This kind of kindness cannot be easily controlled. A manipulative person depends on predictable reactions. They expect guilt to make you surrender. They expect tears to remove consequences. They expect anger to pull you into conflict. When you remain calm and clear, the pattern stops working. You can acknowledge emotion without changing the boundary. I can see that you are upset. I understand that this is painful. My answer is still no. These sentences combine compassion with firmness. At first, this may feel unnatural. You may believe that acknowledging their feelings means you must solve them, but recognition and responsibility are different. You can recognize someone's pain without taking ownership of it. You can let them have their reaction. This is one of the deepest forms of emotional strength. You stop believing that peace requires everyone around you to be pleased. Sometimes keeping your dignity will disappoint people. Sometimes choosing rest will disappoint people who benefited from your exhaustion. Sometimes protecting your time will disappoint those who had unlimited access to it. Let disappointment exist. It is not always a sign of harm. It may be evidence that a healthier balance is forming. There may also be times when you set a boundary too strongly because old fear is speaking. You may withdraw suddenly, refuse every conversation, or punish someone for reminding you of the past. Remain willing to examine this. Boundaries should protect your present, not simply repeat your fear. Ask whether the current person has actually crossed a limit or whether an old wound is expecting them to. Give trustworthy people the chance to respond differently. You can correct a boundary without abandoning boundaries entirely. Wisdom remains flexible. It can become firmer when danger is clear and softer when safety is shown. This prevents strength from turning into rigidity. The strongest tree is not the one that never moves. A tree that cannot bend may break in powerful wind. Strength includes the ability to adjust without losing the roots. Your roots are your values, dignity, awareness, and care. Your flexibility is your ability to listen, learn, forgive, and change your response when conditions change. You do not need one fixed rule for every person. Some relationships need conversation, others need distance. Some mistakes deserve another opportunity. Other patterns show that the opportunity has already been given many times. Buddhist wisdom responds to reality rather than following fear or habit. Over time, you begin to understand that softness was never the problem. The problem was softness without protection, kindness without awareness, and forgiveness without change. You do not have to kill the gentle part of yourself to become safe. You can protect it. You can decide who receives your time, trust, and closeness. You can watch behavior before offering deeper access. You can leave when respect disappears. Your heart can remain warm while your standards remain clear. This is true strength. It is not the strength of someone who cannot feel. It is the strength of someone who feels deeply and still chooses wisely. You may care about a person and deny their request. You may forgive and refuse reunion. You may understand their wounds and still reject their harmful behavior. You may hope they heal and accept that you cannot remain beside them while they do. None of these choices makes you cruel. They show that compassion has become mature. A mature heart does not need to hate in order to leave. It does not need to erase love in order to protect dignity. It understands that sometimes distance is the most honest form of care available. You release the belief that being good means being endlessly reachable. You stop offering your peace as proof of your kindness. You learn that the door to your life can remain closed to someone without closing your heart to the whole world. Pain may have taught you caution, but it does not need to teach you cruelty. Let the lesson make you wiser, not colder. Let your boundaries become stronger, but let your heart remain human. That is how Buddhism trains you to stay kind without becoming easy to hurt. Staying kind without becoming easy to hurt gives you stronger boundaries, but those boundaries will still be tested by people who know how to disturb your peace. Some people do not need to touch your life for long before they reveal exactly what still has power over your mind. A difficult person can enter a room and change your whole emotional state. One rude comment can stay with you for hours. One careless action can destroy your calm. One stubborn refusal can make you feel powerless. You may leave the situation, but the person continues living inside your thoughts. This is where Buddhism asks you to look more deeply. The first question is not only, why are they behaving this way? It is also, why does this behavior have so much control over me? This does not mean their actions are acceptable. It does not mean you should remain close to harmful people or blame yourself for what they do. It means conflict can show you what still controls your reactions. A difficult person can reveal anger you thought you had overcome. They can expose how quickly impatience rises when life refuses to move according to your timing. They can show how strongly you need respect, agreement, praise, obedience, or control. Without the difficult person, these attachments may remain hidden. You may believe you are calm because everyone around you behaves the way you prefer. You may believe you are patient because nothing has delayed you. You may believe you are humble because no one has challenged your opinion. Then someone disagrees, interrupts, criticizes, ignores your advice, or refuses to cooperate. Suddenly, the calm disappears. This does not mean you are a bad person. It means your peace may have depended more on favorable conditions than you realized. Buddhist training begins when you stop using another person's behavior as the only explanation for your reaction. Their action may have triggered the emotion, but the emotion also reveals something already present within you. A spark can start a fire only where something is ready to burn. The difficult person may be the spark. Your hidden expectations, pride, fear, anger, or old wounds may be the dry material. This understanding gives you power because it brings attention back to what you can change. You cannot always change the person. You may explain yourself clearly, set a boundary, offer patience, or show kindness, yet they may continue behaving in the same way. If your peace depends on their transformation, they remain in control. But when you examine your own reaction, you begin working in the one place where real change is possible. You may notice that a person's disrespect makes you furious because you need everyone to recognize your worth. Their words do not only feel rude, they feel like a threat to your identity. You may think, how dare they speak to me like that? Do they not know who I am? Do they not understand what I have achieved? The anger may contain a hidden demand for status. Respect matters. You should not accept repeated insults. But when your entire sense of worth collapses because one person fails to respect you, your confidence may still depend on outside recognition. A secure mind can respond to disrespect without becoming consumed by it. It can say, their behavior is inappropriate and it does not decide my value. Then it chooses the necessary action. Perhaps you end the conversation. Perhaps you correct the statement. Perhaps you leave. The response is clear, but the insult does not become an emotional home. Pride often makes this difficult. Pride wants the other person to know that they cannot treat you that way. It wants them to regret the moment. It wants the final word. The issue stops being protection and becomes victory. You may continue an argument long after the useful point has been made, because walking away feels like losing. You repeat yourself, raise your voice, or collect stronger words. The mind says, I cannot let them think they have won. But what has actually been won if you lose your calm, dignity, and control? Buddhism teaches that not every conflict requires a winner. Sometimes the wisest victory is refusing to become the version of yourself that the argument is trying to create. A difficult person may want your anger because anger gives them power. Once you react, they can move attention away from their behavior and toward your response. They may provoke you until you speak harshly, then act as though your anger is the entire problem. You leave feeling guilty, while the original issue disappears. Awareness interrupts this pattern. Before reacting, notice what is happening. Is the person seeking understanding, or are they seeking a reaction? Is the conversation moving toward a solution, or is it repeating the same emotional circle? You do not need to give every person access to your strongest emotion. Restraint is not weakness. It is control over what you release and where you release it. Difficult people also expose impatience. They may move slowly, repeat questions, ignore instructions, or take longer than you believe they should. The mind becomes irritated because it has created a private schedule for how other people must behave. You think, they should already understand this. They should move faster. They should know better. The word should often hides impatience. It places reality beside an expectation and becomes angry that the two do not match. Sometimes people do need to act more responsibly. A worker may need to complete a duty. A family member may need to respect an agreement. Patience does not mean accepting endless delay. But before responding, examine whether the intensity of your irritation matches the situation. Perhaps the delay is small, but your reaction is large. This may reveal that you are tired, stressed, or carrying frustration from somewhere else. The person in front of you receives an emotion that was built by many earlier moments. This is why awareness matters. Without it, you punish the nearest person for pressures they did not create. A trained mind asks, what else am I carrying into this moment? Maybe the person is difficult, but your lack of rest is making them feel unbearable. Maybe their mistake is real, but an older disappointment is making you react as though this is the final proof that no one can be trusted. When you see the full picture, your response becomes more accurate. You can address what happened without pouring unrelated pain into it. Difficult people may also reveal your need for control. You give advice and they ignore it. You explain the best choice, but they choose another path. You become frustrated because you can see the consequence coming. The mind says, why will they not listen? Sometimes your advice is wise. Sometimes the person will suffer because they refused it. But another person's life remains their life. You can warn, guide, and support. You cannot force understanding into someone who is not ready. The need for control often hides beneath care. You say you only want what is best for them, but your peace depends on them following your plan. When they refuse, you take it personally. You may feel disrespected, even though they are simply making their own choice. Buddhist wisdom teaches compassion without ownership. You can care about the outcome without believing you are entitled to control it. This is especially difficult with people you love. You may see a child, partner, sibling, or friend walking toward a mistake. You want to rescue them. Sometimes help is necessary, but sometimes intervention only delays a lesson they must learn through experience. You can offer your view once with honesty. After that, you may need to release the result. If they return later, you can respond without saying, "I told you so." That phrase often protects pride more than it teaches wisdom. Compassion says, "I hoped you would avoid this, but I am here to help you understand what comes next." This does not mean solving the entire problem for them. It means refusing to use their suffering as proof of your superiority. Difficult people can expose the need to be right. Some arguments continue because both people are no longer discussing the truth. They are defending identity. Being wrong feels dangerous. It feels like weakness, embarrassment, or loss of authority. So the mind stops listening. It searches only for evidence that supports its position. It interrupts. It twists words. It moves the discussion away from facts and toward personal attacks. Buddhist practice asks whether you want truth or victory. If you want truth, you must be willing to discover that part of your view is incomplete. You can say, "I may not be seeing everything." This sentence does not remove your intelligence. It protects it from becoming rigid. A difficult person may be wrong in many ways and still say one thing you need to hear. If you reject everything because you dislike the messenger, you lose the lesson. Wisdom separates the message from the personality delivering it. You can examine the criticism without accepting the person's harshness. You can take what is useful and leave what is cruel. This requires humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is allowing reality to matter more than your image. When someone challenges you, ask whether your first reaction is to understand or defend. The answer reveals much about what controls your mind. Fear is another force difficult people expose. A controlling person may reveal your fear of conflict. You know something is wrong, but you remain silent. Because their anger frightens you, you tell yourself that you are keeping peace. But silence does not always create peace. Sometimes it only hides fear. You may agree with things you dislike, accept unfair demands, or apologize when you have done nothing wrong. The other person becomes stronger because they learn that pressure works. Buddhism does not ask you to avoid conflict at every cost. It teaches you to meet conflict without hatred or panic. Courage can be calm. You can say no without shouting. You can leave without insulting. You can name harm without becoming harmful. The fear may still be present. Courage does not wait for fear to disappear. It acts wisely while fear is present. Each time you do this, the difficult person loses some control over you. They may still be angry, but their anger no longer decides your behavior. This is important because many people spend their lives trying to prevent certain individuals from becoming upset. They organize conversations, choices, and even their future around another person's reactions. They believe, if I keep them calm, I will be safe. This may have begun in childhood, a painful relationship, or an unsafe environment. You learned to watch faces, tones, and moods. You became skilled at adjusting yourself. That skill may have helped you survive, but later it can become a prison. You continue managing everyone's emotions even when the original danger is gone. A difficult person activates the old habit. You immediately begin explaining, calming, pleasing, or surrendering. Awareness allows you to pause and ask, am I in danger, or am I responding to an old fear? This question helps you return to the present. If there is real danger, protect yourself and seek support. If the danger is emotional discomfort, you can remain steady without giving up your position. You do not have to fix every angry face. Someone's displeasure can exist without becoming your responsibility. Difficult people also reveal hidden resentment. Resentment grows when you repeatedly do what you do not truly want to do and then blame others for accepting it. You say yes while meaning no. You keep helping beyond your ability. You remain available at every hour. Then you become angry that no one notices your sacrifice. But people cannot always respect a limit you never clearly express. Resentment can be a sign that a boundary was missing. Instead of blaming the person entirely, ask where you agreed from fear, guilt, or the desire to be needed. This question is not self-blame. It is an invitation to act differently. You may discover that you trained people to expect unlimited access because you were afraid that saying no would reduce their love. Now every request feels like proof that they are selfish. Some may truly be taking advantage, but the pattern also continues because you have not changed your response. When you begin saying no, the relationship may become uncomfortable. That discomfort reveals whether the person valued you or only valued what you provided. A healthy person may feel disappointed but will eventually respect the limit. A manipulative person will attack the limit itself. This information is useful. Conflict shows you the true structure of the relationship. Difficult people may also expose your attachment to fairness. You expect people to give what you give. Because you are loyal, you expect loyalty. Because you listen, you expect to be heard. When they fail, you feel deeply cheated. Your pain is understandable. Mutual respect matters. But the hidden demand that everyone must behave according to your values creates repeated disappointment. Some people do not possess your level of awareness. Some do not value what you value. Some are too absorbed in themselves to return your care. You do not need to lower your values. You need to stop using your values as a prediction of how others will behave. Judge people by their patterns, not by what you would do in their position. This prevents the mind from saying, "I would never do that, so they should not either." Your character does not control theirs. When you see this clearly, you become more careful about where you invest your trust. You stop giving deeply, based only on your own ability to be loyal. You wait to see whether the other person has shown the same quality. This is not suspicion, it is awareness. Buddhism encourages clear seeing. You see people as they are rather than through hope, fear, or personal expectation. Difficult people can teach this faster than comfortable ones. Someone may show you repeatedly that they avoid responsibility, yet you continue expecting a sincere apology. Another person may show that they value control, yet you keep hoping that one more explanation will make them respect your freedom. The suffering grows because your expectation ignores the evidence. Acceptance means believing the pattern without adding hatred. You say, "This is how this person currently behaves. I will respond according to reality." This removes the shock that comes from expecting a different person every time. You may choose distance. You may limit certain conversations. You may stop sharing private information. The action changes because your view becomes clearer. Difficult people also reveal attachment to peace as comfort. You may believe peace means no one argues, no one becomes angry, and no tension appears. But this kind of peace is often only silence. Real peace can exist during an uncomfortable conversation. It comes from remaining connected to awareness while speaking honestly. Your voice may shake. The other person may disagree. The room may feel tense. Yet inside, you know you are acting from truth rather than fear. This is deeper than comfort. Buddhist peace does not depend on the absence of disturbance. It is the ability to remain grounded while disturbance moves around you. A quiet lake may appear peaceful because there is no wind. The greater test comes when wind arrives. In the same way, difficult people reveal whether calm has become part of your practice or only part of your environment. The goal is not to feel nothing. Anger may rise, fear may appear, impatience may move through the body. The training is to notice them before they become your words and actions. There is a small space between a trigger and a response. The untrained mind moves through that space without seeing it. The trained mind learns to pause there. That pause may be one breath. One breath can stop an insult, a threat, or a decision you later regret. It gives awareness enough time to ask, what response protects my dignity and peace? This does not mean responding slowly in every situation. Some moments require immediate action, but many conflicts are not emergencies. The mind reacts as though it must answer now because silence feels uncomfortable. You are allowed to take time. You can say, I need to think before I respond. You can leave a conversation and return later. A difficult person may pressure you for an immediate answer because pressure reduces your clarity. Refusing urgency can protect wisdom. Not every demand deserves a quick response. Difficult people can also reveal how much you depend on being liked. Someone becomes cold toward you, and you immediately search for what you did wrong. You change your behavior to win back their warmth. They learn that withdrawing affection controls you. This pattern can become powerful. The person does not need to say anything. Their silence becomes punishment. Your mind becomes busy trying to restore connection. Buddhism teaches you to notice the craving for approval. You can value a relationship without abandoning yourself to keep it. Ask whether you have acted wrongly. If so, repair it. If not, allow the other person to have their mood. You do not need to chase every withdrawal. Sometimes distance is communication. It reveals that the relationship depended on your obedience. Let the distance show you what words did not. This may hurt, but it also frees you from constant emotional negotiation. Difficult people may expose your habit of judging quickly. You see their behavior and decide you know everything about them. They are terrible. They never care. They are completely selfish. The behavior may truly be harmful, but total judgments can make the mind rigid. Buddhism encourages discernment without hatred. You can say, this behavior is harmful, without deciding that the entire person has no humanity. This distinction protects your heart. When you reduce someone to their worst action, anger becomes easier to justify. You stop seeing causes, conditions, fear, ignorance, or the possibility of change. Understanding these things does not mean allowing harm. It simply prevents your mind from becoming consumed by hatred. You can protect yourself while remembering that difficult people are also shaped by suffering. A controlling person may be controlled by fear. An arrogant person may be hiding insecurity. A cruel person may have trained themselves to attack before anyone can hurt them. This understanding should not become an excuse. It is simply a way of seeing the full picture. Compassion can exist at a distance. You may think, I understand that you are suffering, but I will not allow your suffering to become my suffering. This is mature compassion. Difficult people can also reveal where you are still carrying old wounds. Someone's tone may remind you of a parent. Their silence may remind you of a former partner. Their criticism may awaken a childhood belief that you are never good. Enough. The current person becomes connected to an older pain. Your reaction may seem larger than the event because you are responding to both the present and the past. This does not mean your reaction is foolish. It means it needs understanding. Ask, what does this moment remind me of? The answer may reveal why certain behaviors affect you more deeply than others. Once you see the connection, you can separate the two situations. This person is not the person from my past. This disagreement is not the same danger. I have choices now that I did not have then. These reminders return power to the present. You can then respond to what is happening now rather than to everything that happened before. This is one of the greatest gifts conflict can offer. It points toward wounds that still need care. Without the trigger, you may not have known they were active. The difficult person becomes a mirror, but a mirror is not always a teacher you should keep near. You can learn from someone and still leave them. This is important. Using conflict for self-examination does not mean staying in a harmful environment for spiritual growth. You do not need repeated injury to become wise. Once you understand what the situation reveals, take the action that protects you. Leave if necessary. Report serious harm. Seek help. Reduce contact. Buddhism does not turn suffering into a requirement. The lesson comes from awareness, not continued exposure. There is also a danger of using spiritual ideas to silence yourself. You may think, I should not be angry. I should be more compassionate. This person is teaching me. Then you remain while harm continues. This is not wisdom. It is avoidance disguised as spirituality. Anger can reveal that something is wrong. The goal is not to erase anger before listening to its message. Ask what the anger is protecting. Perhaps it is protecting dignity, safety, truth, or an ignored need. Once you understand the message, choose action carefully. You do not need to become cruel, but you may need to become firm. A strong spiritual practice does not make you easier to control. It makes you clearer. Difficult people also reveal whether you mistake forgiveness for access. You forgive, then allow the person back into the same position. They repeat the harm, and you feel betrayed again. Forgiveness may release the anger, but wisdom remembers the pattern. You can stop hating someone without trusting them. You can wish them peace without reopening the door. This separation protects compassion from becoming foolishness. The person may accuse you of holding the past against them, but consequences are not always punishment. A damaged relationship cannot return to its old form simply because someone wants relief from guilt. Trust requires evidence. The difficult person may not like this. Let their discomfort remain theirs. Your task is to act without hatred, not to remove every consequence of their choices. Difficult people can also reveal how much mental energy you give to comparison. You may compare your patience to their anger, your honesty to their dishonesty, or your effort to their carelessness. You begin feeling morally superior. This superiority creates another kind of attachment. The mind says, I am better than them. The moment this thought grows, compassion weakens. You stop seeing your own blind spots because attention is fixed on theirs. Buddhism teaches that pride can grow even from good behavior. You may be more disciplined, honest, or patient in a particular area, but that does not make you free from ignorance. Everyone has conditions that reveal weakness. The difficult person may be controlled by anger. You may be controlled by pride in not being angry. Both are forms of attachment. Humility remembers, under different conditions, I may also struggle. This does not erase responsibility. It keeps the heart from becoming hard. Difficult people also test whether your kindness is genuine or dependent on being appreciated. You help someone and they fail to say thank you. Immediately, anger rises. You may believe the anger proves they are ungrateful. Perhaps they are, but it may also reveal that your kindness contained a hidden need for recognition. You gave, but part of you expected praise. This is human. The practice is simply to see it. Before giving, ask whether you can offer without controlling the response. If appreciation is necessary, communicate your need honestly instead of pretending you expect nothing. Clear giving prevents hidden resentment. You may also choose not to give when the action would create bitterness. A smaller, sincere gift is often better than a large sacrifice followed by silent anger. Difficult people teach you where your kindness needs greater honesty. They can also reveal whether you use withdrawal as punishment. When hurt, you may become silent, distant, or cold. You tell yourself that you are protecting peace, but part of you wants the person to feel your absence. This is control through silence. A healthy pause is different. It has a clear purpose. You say, "I need time to calm down, and I will return to this conversation." Punishing silence leaves the other person uncertain and anxious. Buddhist awareness asks you to examine intention. Are you stepping away to prevent harm, or are you trying to make them suffer? The outer action may look the same, but the inner purpose changes its quality. This level of honesty can be uncomfortable. It means difficult people may reveal not only your wounds, but also your own harmful habits. You may discover that you interrupt, manipulate, judge, or attack when afraid. Do not use this discovery to hate yourself. Awareness is the beginning of change. You can apologize without defending the behavior. You can practice another response. You can admit, "When I feel ignored, I become controlling." Naming the pattern weakens it. The mind can no longer pretend that every conflict is caused entirely by others. This does not mean accepting blame for everything. It means taking responsibility for what truly belongs to you. A balanced mind separates responsibilities clearly. What did they do? What did you do? What must they change? What can you change? Without this separation, you may either blame yourself for everything or blame the other person for everything. Both positions prevent growth. Buddhist wisdom chooses honesty over comfort. Sometimes you were treated unfairly. Sometimes your reaction also caused harm. Both can be true. You do not need to become innocent in every part of the story to deserve dignity. You can acknowledge your mistake without excusing theirs. This maturity makes conflict useful. It removes the need to protect a perfect image of yourself. Difficult people can also reveal how quickly you believe thoughts during emotional moments. A person frowns and the mind says, "They hate me." They delay a response and the mind says, "They are disrespecting me." They disagree and the mind says, "They think I am foolish." These conclusions may be wrong. Conflict narrows interpretation. The mind chooses the most threatening meaning. Before reacting, ask what you actually know. Perhaps the frown came from tiredness. Perhaps the delay came from another responsibility. Perhaps disagreement concerns the idea, not your worth. This does not mean ignoring clear patterns. It means refusing to turn assumptions into facts. Many conflicts grow from meanings that were never checked. A simple question can prevent hours of suffering. "When you said that, what did you mean?" "I noticed you became quiet. Is something wrong?" Clear communication gives reality a chance to replace fear. If the answer confirms disrespect, you respond accordingly. But at least your action rests on information rather than imagination. Difficult people also teach you the value of choosing where to invest energy. Not every conflict deserves equal attention. Some issues affect safety, dignity, or important responsibilities. They need action. Other issues are small differences, irritating habits, or opinions that have no real power over your life. The mind may treat them all as urgent because irritation wants expression. Wisdom asks whether the issue will matter next week, next month, or next year. This question does not dismiss the present. It places it in proportion. You do not need to correct every false statement, answer every criticism, or win every small disagreement. Your energy is limited. A difficult person may invite you into 10 arguments. You can choose none. Walking away from a useless argument is not avoidance. It is the wise use of attention. The mind becomes stronger when it understands that attention is permission. Whatever you repeatedly attend to gains space within you. A difficult person may occupy only 5 minutes of your day, but receive 5 hours of your thoughts. You continue the interaction after it has ended. This gives them far more influence than the actual situation required. Buddhist practice brings attention back. You notice the mind returning to the person. You do not feed the inner argument. You ask whether any action remains. If not, you release the thought again. This may happen many times. Each return is a refusal to let the person become the center of your inner life. You do not need them to change before you reclaim your attention. This is freedom. The difficult person may continue being difficult. They may never apologize, listen, or grow, but your response can change. At first, their behavior may control your whole day. Later, it controls 1 hour, then a few minutes. Eventually, you see the pattern, respond clearly, and return to peace. This is not because their behavior improved. Your relationship with the trigger changed. You no longer expect them to provide what they have repeatedly shown they cannot provide. You stop entering the same emotional trap. You recognize the invitation and decline it. This is how conflict becomes a mirror rather than a prison. The mirror shows where anger still rules, where pride still demands victory, where fear still silences you, and where control still disguises itself as care. You look honestly, take the lesson, and adjust your response. Then you put the mirror down. You do not remain in endless conflict to prove that you are growing. The purpose of awareness is freedom, not permanent analysis. Over time, difficult people may become less frightening because you understand that their greatest power came from your automatic reaction. Once the reaction is seen, choice becomes possible. You may still dislike the behavior, you may still set limits or leave, but you no longer become whatever the person tries to awaken in you. Their anger does not have to become your anger. Their disrespect does not have to become your self-doubt. Their confusion does not have to become your responsibility. Their refusal to change does not have to become your life's work. You return each responsibility to its proper owner. The other person may remain trapped in their habits. That is their path. Your path is to notice what arises within you and choose what you will strengthen. Every conflict offers 2 possibilities. You can strengthen anger, pride, fear, and the need for control, or you can strengthen awareness, patience, courage, and wise action. The difficult person creates the condition, but you choose what receives practice. That is why the other person does not need to change for your mind to become freer. You may never enjoy their presence. You may never trust them. You may decide that distance is necessary. Freedom does not require closeness. It requires that their behavior no longer decides who you become. You can see the person clearly, protect yourself wisely, and still refuse to let hatred shape your character. You can learn from conflict without worshipping it. You can use the mirror without becoming trapped by the reflection. This is the deeper training Buddhism offers. Difficult people are not always sent to improve you, and you do not need to romanticize the harm they cause. But when conflict enters your life, you can choose not to waste it. You can ask what it reveals. Then you can work on what belongs to you. Protect yourself from what belongs to them, and leave the rest without carrying it into every future moment. The person may not change. They may continue being impatient, proud, controlling, dishonest, or cruel. But their failure to change does not have to become your failure to find peace. You become stronger when you stop making another person's growth the condition for your own freedom. You see their behavior, you see your reaction, you choose your response. And in that space of choice, they begin losing the power they once had over your mind. You do not become strong by controlling life. You become strong by learning how to meet life without losing yourself. Buddhism teaches you to accept what cannot be changed, release the need for certainty, stop turning pain into your identity, and refuse to keep old wounds alive through endless thought. It teaches you to let go of the need to be understood by everyone, remain kind without becoming easy to hurt, and use difficult people as mirrors instead of allowing them to control your peace. The world may still be unfair. People may still disappoint you. Fear, pain, and uncertainty may still appear, but when your mind is trained, these things no longer have the same power. You may feel the storm, but you do not have to become it. If one lesson spoke directly to something you are facing, write, "My mind is becoming stronger," in the comments. Let those words mark the moment you chose peace over reaction. Subscribe to the channel for more Buddhist wisdom that helps you live with a calmer mind, a stronger heart, and greater freedom.